Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to telescopes.net. My name is Dr. D. Daniel Mounsey, aka Dr. D, also known as Dr. D. Probably wondering where that name came from. One day I'll tell you that story. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the Maksutov Cassegrain. It's well loved and well hated by many observers. We have the refractor, well loved and well hated by many astronomers. We have the Newtonian reflector, ladies and gentlemen, which is loved and hated by many astronomers. Now, let me tell you a little bit about each one of these telescopes and tell you how to utilize them to their fullest potential. Okay, let's discuss the Maksutov Cassegrain. Light enters in from the front, comes off the primary, bounces back up the secondary, then back to another diagonal that's back here. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't remember the amount of reflections, but I'll have to think about it. Okay, now we have the refractor, which has the simplest of light path. Light goes in, it's bent, and converts into the diagonal, up and into the eyepiece, ladies and gentlemen. The Newtonian reflector, best bang for your buck. Now, light enters in from the front, reflects off of the primary mirror, back to the secondary, and into the eyeball. Be careful, don't point any of these telescopes at the sun. These are specially made to look at night. What else do you want to know about these? Deep sky objects. Okay, Maksutov Cassegrain. 3.5 inches in this particular case is a great little telescope, very sharp, but it has limited objects you can look at. All the bright objects which are close to us are very large, which means there's a limited amount you can see in the narrow field of view of Maksutov Cassegrains. But they're wonderful for looking at stars and planets and very small types of objects, craters on the moon, etc. The refractor is a wonderful instrument. It has the capability to give you vast vistas of the night sky and the Milky Way. ICC 4665 in Ophiuchus looks stupendous. The Pleiades cluster in Taurus looks beautiful. Wide, you can see it all. Stars situated in various areas, very beautiful. The Newtonian reflector. It's a very popular telescope, collects a lot of light to see those faint galaxies, comes in sizes of 20 inches, 15 inches, 10 inches, and they're not expensive. Now, as refractors get larger, they become more cumbersome and very expensive and very awkward to look through because you have to get low to the ground to look through them. On the other hand, Newtonians can sometimes be very tall and very high, very frustrating sometimes because you have to use tall step ladders. But let me tell you, it is the stairway to heaven because when you see the galaxies in the full high res, it just looks amazing. The Cassegrain. Let's discuss this. It's a popular telescope because it's so portable. Take the focal length, it's all folded back and forth, but it's good. It's a popular telescope. It comes on little go-to mounts. I just have a little tube assembly here to illustrate to you guys how the different tubes are relative to one another. You can utilize different magnifications with these telescopes. That means that all you have to do is take various eyepieces, anywhere from 4 millimeters all the way up to 30 millimeters, 1.25 eyepieces. This one's kind of neat. This refractor comes with the 2-inch star diagonal with the 2-inch 1.25 adapter. It's by Explorer Scientific. Now I have to be careful of the things I say about this because Scott Roberts could get real violent and get angry at me. So, we got a fine focuser here. This is really nice. If you want to get nice pristine pinpoints, you just utilize a very fine focus here. We have the adjustable dew cap. We have the provision here to allow you to put an 8x50 finder on here if you want. We have the 2-inch star diagonal with 2-inch 1.25 adapter, which means that you can utilize 1.25 eyepieces or 2-inch eyepieces. I mean, the sky's the limit with this thing. On Newtonian reflectors, you can get 2-inch eyepieces as well. However, the demonstration model that I have here is limited to 1.25, and of course, the Maksutov Cassegrain that you see here only allows you to use 1.25 eyepieces. However, there are various apertures of all these telescopes available, and you can use these with 2-inch eyepieces, and you can use these with 2-inch eyepieces. Did I make myself clear? Absolutely. I can be Russian, I can drink my vodka while I'll explain these telescopes to you. Or let me just tell you the differences of the telescopes. Newtonian reflectors, best bang for your buck. Listen, if you want to look at planetary nebula, if you want to look at globulars, if you want to look at galaxies, I highly recommend the Newtonian reflector. It is probably going to be the best way to gather your light, to get your photons, to stimulate those eyes, and get you stimulated in astronomy and get you all excited. I mean, that's what it's all about. Refractors, on the other hand, tend to be a little bit limited in their aperture. And the prices just become insane as the apertures increase. Now, this is a very affordable refractor, but they're limited on their aperture, so they're limited types of objects that you can see, but they do produce beautiful vistas of the night sky. The Maxitov Cassegrain, on the other hand, these are very popular telescopes. They come in the form of what is referred to as a Schmidt Cassegrain telescope. They go anywhere from 5 inches all up to 14 inches, 16 inches, very large. But those are like observatory class telescopes. You're going to be limited to your ability to carry them. After about 11 inches or 12 inches, they become too cumbersome and a little unwieldy. But you do get a lot of performance in a small tube assembly, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what's so cool about it. One disadvantage of them is that they do have long focal lengths, which means that you're going to be looking at a part of the sky that's the size of a postage stamp. Very limited, ladies and gentlemen. So you got to factor in all these little things and weigh these things out when you're choosing between these telescopes. Because it doesn't matter which telescope I tell you about. It doesn't matter if you like the Newtonian, there's always somebody who's going to hate it. It doesn't matter if somebody likes the refractor, there's always going to be somebody who hates it. And it doesn't matter if you like the Cassegrain, there's always going to be somebody who hates it. Visit us at telescopes.net. Or you can call us toll free at 888-427-8766. Dr. D out.
My name's Chris Heisinger. I'm the owner of Takahashi America, which is the distributor for Takahashi telescopes in North and South America.
My name is Ryuichi Hashimoto, the Takahashi Japan. I'm in charge of the managing director in the international sales. In Takahashi opinion, is very important to the USA market. And I'm exported to the in the US. And, we're proud of good quality and high-end mania for the telescope and the reflector. And so this in the NIF, we are releasing to the new product is a Starbase 80 for beginners. My company important to the whole expanding to the astronomy market. So before we have the mainly to the mania for the telescope, but for the we have the beginners telescopes have the so expanding, so the beginner for the growing up to the telescope market. Whole Takahashi is very proud of this issue.
So Takahashi was actually introduced to the American market 40 plus years ago by a company called Swift, which imported Takahashi-made telescopes under their name. The company that owns Takahashi America had a strong relationship with Swift, and when Swift decided that they no longer wanted to sell telescopes, Takahashi America started to, or the predecessor to Takahashi America started to import the Takahashi scopes directly into the United States. I believe that was sometime in the 70s. Takahashi's been producing astronomical telescopes since the early 1960s. I think that Takahashi has a long history of excellence in manufacture, and the Japanese in general have a very strong culture of quality control and precise engineering. And just over the decades, they have refined the telescope designs to be best in class among the competitors. The telescopes themselves are finely engineered and refined, and Takahashi has a commitment to a premium product, so that they are meant for the serious amateur astronomer and some professional astronomers.
So we have the casting part of the factory, very unique production company. So almost the telescope mount is a machining part, but we have proud of casting part in the factory. And in the future, we are proud of continue to the product to the casting. And all telescope is handmade in Japan. And craftsmanship have our factory staff, and we are I'm direct selling to overseas and direct selling to domestic, And so one by one, the telescope is so very proud is a good quality control to the telescope.
Takahashi is continually innovating and looking toward the future, and there are several designs in process to supersede existing telescopes and to introduce new models into the market. An example of that is the FOA 60, which was released last year. It's a fluoride doublet, but it's a wide airspace doublet that shares some features in common with the TOA series. So it's capable of really high strels and extreme magnification and is ideal for planetary work. So there's constant innovation ongoing, and I think that in the future, the future is you'll see continued innovation in the future.
And recently, the CCD camera manufacturer is more to the very improvement camera and very low prices. So almost the customer using to the CCD camera. So Takahashi thinking in the future telescope is best attached the digital camera CCD is proceeding to the new equipment. And so of course now current FSQ16ED is a very adjustment to the camera, but in every time improvement in new equipment, new telescope. If you customer have the idea, please you send to us your idea. I'm so thinking about the improvement telescope and mount.
The ability to image with telescopes and to make that more accessible to the general public, both from a price perspective and a technologically understanding perspective, is important, because the imaging in the past has been the domain of the very technically literate, and the more that we as an industry can make that more plug and play, so that people with a smartphone can easily take images with a telescope, an inexpensive telescope, the more attraction it will have for people who grew up in a smartphone generation.
So in this Japanese astronomy market, the same problem in the youngest generation. The youngest generation not spend on the equipment, all of them, not especially the telescope astronomy. So we're thinking about so expanding to the astronomy market for the domestic and overseas, and we usually using to the telescope and the equipment, and usually using to the smartphone, the controlling to the system, and more so in very in the astronomy and space universe is very interesting. Some issue. So information. I have to information to all of us. It's a responsibility, I think.
Growing up, I was always interested in science technology. It's every kid's dream, it seems, or at least it was, to be an astronaut one day, and I shared that dream. I ended up studying engineering and was an engineer for a while, and astronomy is a very technical hobby, so it tends to attract people who like technical things, and engineers usually fit that bill. So I was an amateur astronomy, not nearly as serious as some of my current customers, but over the course of my career, I tend to stay technically focused, and at some point I decided that I wanted to do more than just be an amateur astronomer, but actually own a business that serves the astronomy community, and that's how I got where I am today. I think my piece of advice, and this is what I tell people when they come into our shop and ask about what they want to do and how they should get started, particularly when it comes to astrophotography, is start simple. Start with a short focal length refractor, start with a simple camera setup. Don't worry about guiding, don't worry about any sort of the complications that can come with astrophotography, because I think you get a solid foundation of the basics, and then you can build upon that. If you go in too deep and get too technical too fast, you might get in over your head and decide that this hobby is just too much.
In Japan, there are star party in some of the destination. Takahashi Japan is an exhibition to the using telescope, so the observing star is the coming to people. So we thinking so the ordinary people getting chance to the observing and getting chance to take a picture for the star is so many people interested in the universe and space. Please, you ordinary people coming to the interesting astronomy equipment and so join to us, please.
The actual encoder into the. Oh, it's the motor. It's the motor. Yeah. It's this. Where's the motor?
Well, I started astronomy in 1976. By 78, I was building my own equipment. Joined the Los Angeles Astronomical Society in 76 also. By about 1984, I had a cave STELA mount that I had modified extensively. And one of the gentlemen from the club said, "Why don't you build your own mount? You have enough equipment to do it." And I said, that's a good idea. So that's when the GM100 came out in 1986. Then in 1992, we started making them for a major company. Did that for 5 years until 97. And in 97, we broke apart from them and started making them on our own and selling them. Well, at the time we built the mount, which was the GM100, which looks very much like the G11. There was no equatorial mounts really out there. You had, a couple from Japan, I think, but most of it was all fork mounts and no equatorials were out there. And so we started doing that and just happened to come out with a very good design that was, really has not changed much over the 30 years it's been out. I was always trained by my father when he says, when you build something, just add extra holes so that you always have something to come back with to bolt on, and that's what I always did. So we always have holes there. People go, "What are these for?" And you go, "Don't know yet." So it's a good thing to have, and it's always worked out well. So I think what we're trying to do with our mounts is give a very accurate and stable platform so people can start getting into longer photos. A lot of people are just doing these 1 minute shots and then they stack them. And the thing is you want to get 5, 10, 15 minute shots. But when you start doing that, your mount has to be very accurate. A lot of mounts can't do it, and all you can get away with it is like maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And our mounts, you can go into 15, 20, 25 minute shots with it. And that's, I think, what will keep the industry going, because people get tired of looking at the same 1 minute photo stacked, 60 frames on it, because you just can't go deep enough and get a lot of information out of the photos. You're just taking a lot of short pictures. You're missing a lot of information, and especially if you're getting into H alpha type things where your photos are going to be 40 hours by the time you're done with them, and I think that's what will help keep the industry going. What I love about astronomy really is the mechanics. I love building mounts and constantly working on them to make them better and better and better. We've been building mounts now for 36 years, and so have a little bit of background on that. So it's a professional tinkerer, building go-karts and just taking machine shop in high school, and all that is just really just a love of machining. And never took any mechanics courses or engineering courses. It's just all from trial and error, and just a constant work in progress to make them better and better. My goal is mainly to make a mount that is extremely accurate, and it will just stay that way because it's machined accurate. We don't try to use any kind of systems that will compensate for errors. We try to machine everything so there is no error. That's my main goal in the mount industry. So I love the mechanics of old equipment because they just make things do the most incredible stuff with just mechanics. They don't have solenoids or it's just all just hard mechanics. It's like a weight drive system for the old telescopes. It's just this weight-driven mechanism, and that's what all these are. They're all systems that are mechanically incredible, and the people that have designed them were just brilliant. I think quality is, I like the way old stuff is built because it's still here and still working, and it's 125 years old, and I think that's influenced me in making products that are going to last you a lifetime. And also, I try to make it visually pleasant to look at too. I don't want it to look like, a casting or something, because we don't cast, we machine everything, and so I want it to look good. And that's what I get from older equipment that, antiques that I buy, is they're beautiful. You can just stare at them. You don't even have to use them. You can just sit there and look at them all day. About 1998, 99 area, and I was at a trade show, NAB, in Vegas, which is the National Association of Broadcasters. It was a film show, and there was a company across the way that was making this 8-axis motion control system, and I knew one of the guys there, so I went and talked to him, and I said, where did you get the electronics from? Because I wanted to come out with a servo system for our mounts. And he said, this gentleman right here in the booth built it for us, and so I talked to him, and he was into astronomy. So I hired them to make up the servo driver system. Problem is, it had no smarts at all. It was just a servo system to run motors. Then, just out of the blue, couldn't have been more than a week after the show, I get this email from a gentleman in Germany saying that I'm designing a go-to system for your mount. Would you be interested in it? And I emailed him back in one of my long emails, as usual, saying yes. And about 6 months passed. I got the servo drive system from the company. A week later, I get an email from him saying, okay, I finished it. And I said, is it servo or is it steppers? And he says, steppers. So I told him, I said, I have a servo system. Can I send it to you and see if you can get the two to talk to each other and work? And I said, I'm going to be out there actually in a couple of weeks doing a trade show in Munich. And he said, sure. So 2 weeks later, I met up with him, stayed at his house for about a week, and played with the system, and it was unbelievable. And from there on, he's been constantly doing all the programming for it. And so, and the nice thing is if there's something somebody wants, says, it'd be nice if this go-to system did this, I just email him and say, can you do this? He does it, and you just download it into your Gemini, and it's going. And they've just been upgrading the electronics, mainly because after about every 10 years, you can't get the parts anymore, so you have to just change to new electronics. And that's why they're where it is now. It has nothing to do with it's better, it's just couldn't make it the other way. but they constantly get better because the programming is better, the chips are better, and all. So. That's a C6 F8, built in 1969. They only made 50 of them. It was nice that they picked our plate to become the standard, and it's probably because we were the first ones out with a system, and it just made it, I think, so much better for all the astronomy people out there that they did decide to stick with one size, and everyone just basically copied it from us. But it made it so much easier because now people can interchange their telescopes and all that. And so it's, I don't look at it really as an achievement or something. It's just, it was nice that they picked us, but that's all I can say on that.
Warning! Warning, my foot! Be still, you bubblehead!
Look, it went on!
Rush. Kill. Destroy.
I like Lost in Space TV show. Just thought it would be so neat to be able to fly around there, and I think that just got my interest in the stars and all that, because every time I look up to the stars to this day, I just would love to see them find life somewhere else, you know, any kind of life. And just a dream before I die that happens.
Skywatcher started out in 1999 in China. David Shen opened his factory, and this was his first brand, the Skywatcher. Does very well throughout Europe. Didn't really get a lot of traction in the US, didn't get a lot of marketing, which is why I was brought on in 2012. The product was not known, it wasn't advertised, so people's perception of the product was based almost exclusively on its price point, which is actually one of its features. It's a really good product for a decent value. So my job was to let people know, make them aware of the fact that Skywatcher products are in fact quality products at a value price. In the US specifically, we have been targeting mid to upper range astronomers, people that are a little more knowledgeable, maybe astrophotographers. We have specifically not focused on the lower end products, acromats or mass market tubes that you would find in department stores, that kind of thing. Ours are more specialty, simply because one, we don't have the manpower to handle the kind of volumes that the lower end stuff would require, and it's allowing us to really hone in on the message and to the people that would appreciate the message of quality and value. Well, the first bit of advice I give people is to be patient. There's a learning curve, and it is, it's science. It's science, but it's amazing science. It's science that you can experience visually and tactily right there in front of you. But it also is going to take time to become proficient at it. So enjoy. Don't be afraid to play around, and again, just be patient. One of the things that we do consciously is interact with the factory on a daily basis with feedback on new products or even existing products. We have a couple of people who are very hands-on, very active out in the field using these products. So when it comes time to modify the products, when it comes time to upgrade the products, we have very valuable real-world experience with them so that we can operate as a partnership with the factory and with product development. So what we found over the last few years is that the photography market and the astronomy market has a great deal of overlap. And by pushing photography products that do astronomy, we are able to introduce a whole segment of the population to astrophotography and astronomy that might otherwise not be exposed to it. We are the party animal of the astronomy community. We try not to do it in the office, but when we are out at star parties, that's definitely true. As far as what age range we're shooting for, astronomy, just as a hobby, generally skews towards 40 plus individuals, 40 plus years of age and older. But we're finding that with the photography products, our star trackers, our other photography products, those are actually bringing in much younger people in their 20s. It is terribly important that we get these people in. Otherwise, the hobby dies, and we don't want that to happen. Some of the things that we've been doing is photography first, astronomy second types of products. We're also developing a lot of our products with Wi-Fi capabilities so that you can manipulate them through your phone with a smart app. So I think anything where somebody gets to use their phone is going to skew a little bit younger.
All right, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon or good evening, depending on where in the world you guys are watching. And we will be starting at about 1 o'clock Pacific time, which is about 30 minutes from now. We're going to have a little bit of a different format this time round, and we're going to have an interactive chat with everybody, plus our usual presentations that we will be having. And hopefully you guys will enjoy this format. Just to let you know, we will be doing something different going forward. What I'm planning here is having discussions with myself and Daniel, who works at the store. We thought we'd give this program or format a little try, and then we'll just bring in regular guests within the program. And then basically once a month we'll do that. And then inside of that month, so there'll be 2 live shows like we normally do within the month, we will have our regular talks and things like that. One of the things that I will be doing or bringing up would be something on active optics, which is a relatively new thing in so many ways. And it's one of these undiscovered gems within astronomy. It's been around for God knows how long, and there is a difference between active optics and adaptive optics. So we're going to try and cover both of those things in one of the shows coming up. We're just prepping up for everything for that right now, because it's finding the experts that can actually explain it in such a way that you guys can understand. And of course, we're going to have other regular programming in, probably dragging people in like Adam Block, which is always great fun. And then, of course, I'm actually going to be working with him on a documentary, quite possibly. So that could be exciting. And we'll probably premiere it on here. So you guys will be the first to see this, hopefully. But anyway, so we're just going to go back into a break. We will be back in about 15 minutes, and then we're going to start the programming at 1 o'clock. So don't go away. Grab yourself a nice warm drink, because it is pretty cold out there. And I'll see you in just a second.
I'm Jen Winter, and I own Daystar Filters, and we're actually out of Warrensburg, Missouri, flyover country out there. We have lots of square footage, lots of acreage, and big blue sky. I've had a very strong math background, and I was studying mechanical engineering very early on, but I also was heavily into photography, scanning things. I worked in a newspaper, so I was in media with a math background, or math with a media background. The two came together when I met my late husband, Vic, who was an astrophotographer with a Kansas City Star. And I was instantly hooked on astrophotography because it was a marriage of that art and science both in together, and Vic really got me addicted pretty early. He pulled a 16-inch Dobsonian out and put it on Saturn, and the rest was history. That's one of the worst ways to get hooked, of course, Saturn. How many people hooked on Saturn? I always like to refer to a story when I was in school. We had a gentleman who was working in Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas, and I was going to school there, and a gentleman discovered there was, a grad student said, "What do you mean we have a planetarium and nobody goes to here?" So he went around to every school, everywhere, brought every student, every person in town went to the planetarium that year. And in my little group, as we were going up to the top floor, we passed a room in this physics building, and here were these guys in their little brown corduroy suits, just all excited because Voyager was going by Saturn, Jupiter, I don't even remember because I was so small. But here they are, they're showing video of a planetary pass and getting data live. They were coming out of their skins, jumping up and down in the chair, and I'm like, well, this is really interesting. And I was fascinated at that moment, but I got dragged away to go to see the planetarium, which frankly, after seeing actual images of the planets, seeing the dots was a little bit less. Well, I think we need to get a little bit more hands-on and a little bit less hands-off. I'm finding that when we do outreach, in our area of the country, there's an awful lot of outreach, but I find that the youth are becoming so addicted to their screens, and there are so many good pictures of astronomical things out there that seeing something on the web is sufficient. They're satisfied by seeing these Hubble images. But when they have the chance to look through that telescope and see Saturn through the eyepiece, there's always a moment where they question, is this actually real? Am I actually seeing this? So that direct connection to the equipment, having a hands-on experience instead of a cyber experience, that makes more of an impact, I see, in getting them moved along further into astronomy. We found that schools have more difficulty getting, with budget issues, they're having difficulties getting people out to field trips for nighttime astronomy. But daytime astronomy, of course, you can go right to the school. We have outreach guys who can, and there are even a lot of outreach support groups where you can participate and even have access to materials to get out and visit the schools. And during the daytime, the teachers are much more likely to have activities and the hands-on opportunities daytime versus nighttime. It helps a lot. The most important thing with the sun is, because the sun is so bright, astronomy is usually about collecting light, and more light is better. But with solar observing, you're buying dark. The sun is already bright enough, it's so bright that it'll blind you. So with solar, we always have to reduce down the amount of light that's going to damage your eyes through infrared and ultraviolet radiation. But also, if you reduce the light from wavelengths that you don't really care to see, then you can start to pick out details that you wouldn't otherwise. And the hydrogen is all about, perhaps you remember in chemistry that you have these little emission lines that in a spectrum you see lights light up in different colors. So we're going to isolate the color of light that hydrogen emits. So then you can, and hydrogen and helium is what the sun is made of. So then you get to see what the sun is really doing instead of it just being a big circle. Hydrogen alpha will be the brightest line, and if we got more complicated, there are energy levels and how much energy it takes to make different wavelengths of light. Hydrogen also gives, the alpha line gives a more interesting view of the sun. So you have, it's more interesting, it shows more contrast, it's brighter, and it represents an energy level that physicists are interested in the science from. A lot of times folks don't quite realize that the sun is a star. It's the most fundamental concept about astronomy and about actually solar physics. Everybody gets excited. There's even, what is this, the new TV show Rick and Morty is all about physics, all about the physics. Well, we happen to have a really cool physics experiment Einstein's theory of relativity references things like the sun in it, and so solar physics is astronomy, except up close in a way that we can watch it change hour to hour, day to day. We're still today, even Citizen Kate is learning more about. The Citizen Kate was the project where they were looking at the sun during the eclipse. We're still doing real science on the sun every single day to learn more about physics that we didn't know yesterday. So I like solar versus nighttime just for that interactive aha moment where it's not just black and white dots.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Telescopes.net. My name is Dr. D. Daniel Mounsey, aka Dr. D, also known as Dr. D. Probably wondering where that name came from. One day I'll tell you that story. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the Maksutov Cassegrain. It's well loved and well hated by many observers. We have the refractor, well loved and well hated by many astronomers. We have the Newtonian reflector, ladies and gentlemen, which is loved and hated by many astronomers. Now, let me tell you a little bit about each one of these telescopes and tell you how to utilize them to their fullest potential. Okay, let's discuss the Maksutov Cassegrain. Light enters in from the front, comes off the primary, bounces back up the secondary, then back to another diagonal that's back here. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't remember the amount of reflections, but I'll have to think about it. Okay, now, we have the refractor, which has the simplest of light path. Light goes in, it's bent, and converts into the diagonal, up and into the eyepiece, ladies and gentlemen. The Newtonian reflector, best bang for your buck. Now, light enters in from the front, reflects off of the primary mirror, back to the secondary, and into the eyeball. Be careful, don't point any of these telescopes at the sun. These are specially made to look at night. What else do you want to know about these? Deep sky objects. Okay, Maksutov Cassegrain, 3.5 inches in this particular case, is a great little telescope, very sharp, but it has limited objects you can look at. All the bright objects which are close to us are very large, which means there's a limited amount you can see in the narrow field of view of Maksutov Cassegrains. But they're wonderful for looking at stars and planets and very small types of objects, craters on the moon, etc. The refractor is a wonderful instrument. It has the capability to give you vast vistas of the night sky and the Milky Way. ICC 4665 in Ophiuchus looks stupendous. The Pleiades cluster in Taurus looks beautiful. Wide, you can see it all. Stars situated in various areas, very beautiful. The Newtonian reflector. It's a very popular telescope, collects a lot of light to see those faint galaxies, comes in sizes of 20 inches, 15 inches, 10 inches, and they're not expensive. Now, as refractors get larger, they become more cumbersome and very expensive and very awkward to look through because you have to get low to the ground to look through them. On the other hand, Newtonians can sometimes be very tall and very high, very frustrating sometimes because you have to use tall step ladders. But let me tell you, it is the stairway to heaven because when you see the galaxies in the full high res, it just looks amazing. The Cassegrain. Let's discuss this. It's a popular telescope because it's so portable. Take the focal length, it's all folded back and forth, but it's good. It's a popular telescope. It comes on little go-to mounts. I just have a little tube assembly here to illustrate to you guys how the different tubes are relative to one another. You can utilize different magnifications with these telescopes. That means that all you have to do is take various eyepieces, anywhere from 4 millimeters all the way up to 30 millimeters, 1.25 eyepieces. This one's kind of neat. This refractor comes with the 2-inch star diagonal with the 2-inch 1.25 adapter. It's by Explorer Scientific. Now I have to be careful of the things I say about this because Scott Roberts could get real violent and get angry at me. So, we got a fine focuser here. This is really nice. If you want to get nice pristine pinpoints, you just utilize a very fine focus here. We have the adjustable dew cap. We have the provision here to allow you to put an 8x50 finder on here if you want. We have the 2-inch star diagonal with 2-inch 1.25 adapter, which means that you can utilize 1.25 eyepieces or 2-inch eyepieces. I mean, the sky's the limit with this thing. On Newtonian reflectors, you can get 2-inch eyepieces as well. However, the demonstration model that I have here is limited to 1.25, and of course, the Maksutov Cassegrain that you see here only allows you to use 1.25 eyepieces. However, there are various apertures of all these telescopes available, and you can use these with 2-inch eyepieces, and you can use these with 2-inch eyepieces. Did I make myself clear? Absolutely. I can be a Russian. I can drink my vodka while I'll explain these telescopes to you. Or let me just tell you the differences of the telescopes. Newtonian reflectors, best bang for your buck. Listen, if you want to look at planetary nebula, if you want to look at globulars, if you want to look at galaxies, I highly recommend the Newtonian reflector. It is probably going to be the best way to gather your light, to get your photons, to stimulate those eyes, and get you stimulated in astronomy and get you all excited. I mean, that's what it's all about. Refractors, on the other hand, tend to be a little bit limited in their aperture. And the prices just become insane as the apertures increase. Now, this is a very affordable refractor, but they're limited on their aperture, so they're limited types of objects that you can see, but they do produce beautiful vistas of the night sky. The Maksutov Cassegrain, on the other hand, these are very popular telescopes. They come in the form of what is referred to as a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. They go anywhere from 5 inches all up to 14 inches, 16 inches, very large. But those are like observatory class telescopes. You're going to be limited to your ability to carry them. After about 11 inches or 12 inches, they become too cumbersome and a little unwieldy. But you do get a lot of performance in a small tube assembly, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what's so cool about it. One disadvantage of them is that they do have long focal lengths, which means that you're going to be looking at a part of the sky that's the size of a postage stamp. Very limited, ladies and gentlemen. So you got to factor in all these little things and weigh these things out when you're choosing between these telescopes. Because it doesn't matter which telescope I tell you about. It doesn't matter if you like the Newtonian, there's always somebody who's going to hate it. It doesn't matter if somebody likes the refractor, there's always going to be somebody who hates it. And it doesn't matter if you like the Cassegrain, there's always going to be somebody who hates it. Visit us at telescopes.net. Or you can call us toll free at 888-427-8766. Dr. D out.
Okay, so where do we begin? We've probably been doing this show for, I don't know, 10 months by now. And in the entire 10 months, I have never had the owner of telescopes.net show up on the live stream. And I thought, now's a great time to do this because this particular event is dedicated to the women in astrophotography and just astronomy in general. And what more way to introduce the owner of telescopes.net than to bring in the owner, who is actually a woman, believe it or not. So just so you guys understand out there, this is not an all guys dominated sport. There are a lot of girls out there, believe it or not. And here's living proof of some of them because I'm already surrounded and I'm already outnumbered. And it's only just the beginning. So, Farah, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into this crazy hobby.
Well, Simon, this was Woodland Hills Cameras and Telescopes was my first job out of college. And I was lucky enough to get interested in astronomy. And in 1986, when I took over the business, my first inclination was to find a market niche that would be different from cameras, and that was astronomy. And as you know, the rest of it is history. And we've been very successful thanks to all the men in the industry, obviously, many moons ago. Mm-hmm. But as you know, right now, after so many years, there is a few of us in the market that is helping us grow and be successful.
So it's kind of strange because I discovered the store purely by accident. Now, I worked in production in the TV and film world, and I've always known about Woodland Hills Camera, and I never knew about the telescope side of things. The one thing that I loved about when I first walked into the store was it was the sheer knowledge of what people had. I mean, I remember coming in with this beaten up mount, for lack of a better description, that I bought off of Craigslist. And Daniel actually, took the time to go through with me how this whole thing would work and how to put it together and things like that. Share with us real quick your experience with the customers and how you love to get these people into a hobby that it's considered like kind of difficult, but it's almost like we've simplified it for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I think astronomy and really honestly, even if you look at cameras, it's the same story. You have to have the knowledge of the product. You have to know how to use the product, how to qualify the client, so you don't hand them a product that they wouldn't know which end of it is up or what to do with it. That's our job. That's what we do. And if it just so happened that you end up with a product that you're having issues with, that's where we're always present to help you through it, to help you resolve your issues and or up or downgrade you accordingly. That's what we really bank on. We bank on our knowledge, our customer service, and the fact that we accommodate the end user to make sure that they don't get discouraged and get out of the hobby as opposed to, become an exciting and adventurous hobby for them.
Right. I mean, you take the business of selling telescopes to another level. It's not just about sales because you're also a part of various charitable programs within astronomy, like Astronomers Without Borders. Just give us a quick insight about that.
Oh, indeed. Astronomers Without Borders was initiated back in 2009 by a gentleman by the name of Mike Simmons. Amazing guy. He just goes out there and does his hardest in order to bring astronomy to the world. Most of the time to underprivileged societies that don't have an opportunity to have an experience of astronomy. It's just like one way of getting the world together and bringing it into one is through Astronomers Without Borders. I've been blessed to be a part of this organization for many years. We also did a few times, we tried to reach out actually to college students, the younger kids. Through Pierce College, we put out a couple of events called SIA, which was amazing. We had kids coming from all over the colleges from Southern California, and we made it fun and we made it exciting. So reaching out for us is second nature, absolutely.
Cool. So you guys at home who are probably watching, just noticing that people are popping up all over your screen, we're going to have one of the co-founders of the STELA Astrophotography group coming on a little bit later. She's actually in Australia, so to have her dragged out of bed at this time in the morning for them is a little bit too early. So she'll be joining us at around about 2:30 Pacific time. So it's kind of, we're doing this backwards almost, which is kind of strange. But I just want to acknowledge that I have Amy Astro here, who's going to be doing her talk at 1 o'clock, which is in about 5 minutes. Then we have, I got to remember, it's Black Rock Castle Observatory. Is that correct? Oh, you're going to have to unmute yourself because we can't hear you. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I'm Danielle from Black Rock Castle Observatory, and I'm known as Sacred Black on Instagram and Twitter and things.
And then we also have various members of the group that will be appearing throughout the show. It's going to acknowledge Olga down there. I don't know what time it is for you down there, Olga. Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, hold on, we can't hear you there. Oh, okay, we'll come back to her in just a second. And then, of course, we have Amy hiding in the wings. And then there is a couple of other people that are hiding in the background, which either they're shy or they don't want to be seen on camera. It's entirely up to them. So without any much more delay, of course, you guys at home, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, but we're pretty much going to start with the presentation. So Amy, I don't know if you want to do a screen share or if, however you want to do this. The floor is pretty much yours at this point.
All right, I'm going to attempt a screen share here. I've got a PowerPoint for you.
Excellent.
Host disabled. You got to let me do it, man.
Uh-oh, hold on. Let's try that.
All right, let's try screen one and oops.
There we go.
There we go. I guess we need to do a slideshow here from the beginning. What do you see now? Do you see the full screen?
Yes.
All right. Sharing the opposite screen that I expected, but that's just great. Today, what I wanted to tell you guys about, or we'll talk about, is something in astrophotography that never gets talked about before. It's kind of a forgotten element, but it's one of those things that's very critical to us when we're trying to do our images. So let's talk about, it's kind of like when you buy a car or when you buy a house, there's always a story you get before the purchase. And then after you buy the stuff, there's another story that comes along. Well, the story before the purchase with astrophotography is there's just some key gear you need. It's no big deal. You just need to pick up a few items. So one, you need yourself a telescope. You need an equatorial mount, image camera, and a computer. That's it. That's all you need to go do. So you go out and you purchase these items and you start trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? There's something missing. So you start reaching out, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, or you find your local astronomy club, and then you find out about some things that you still need to purchase. And these are the items that you find out about usually after the sale. And that's, you need to get a guide scope, a guide camera, a finder, and a field flattener. All right, so we've got all these items. We've got it all assembled. We're out there in the field, we're hooked up, ready to go, and we take our first image. And this is what we get. Well, in theory, it doesn't look that bad, but when you start zooming in and you look at the corners, you're going to see that there's some star streaks. And really, we don't want to have star streaks in the corners. And when you think about it, wasn't that field flattener supposed to take care of that for us? So now we start doing some digging. And this is when we find out about spacers. Now, spacers, you say, okay, well, why do I need them? And how many do I need? Well, that depends on back focus. It's like, wait, what? what on earth is back focus? It's like, all right, guys, I've already bought all my gear, and now I've bought the second round of gear that you said I needed. And now you need to tell me that I've got to do some back focus. And well, it's not something that we intuitively know, but I'm going to break it down really easy for you. But also to let you know that some manufacturers don't necessarily call it back focus when you're looking on their websites. Some call it the sensor to flange distance. All right. Now, the basic field flattener looks like this one over here on the left. And this is a 1x field flattener. You can also get them as field flattener reducers at like a 0.8x, which is pretty common to use. But what we want to do is we want to know what is the distance technically from the surface of the lens in the field flattener all the way to the end of the scope. Which way am I going here? We want to know from the surface of the flattener all the way to our sensor. But we can't put a set of calipers right here. It's a little bit too, you just can't do it. So the easiest way to do is to go with the flange that's on the field flattener. And we measure that to our camera sensor, and we're looking at approximately 54.7. Now, this is the distance that the manufacturer gave us, and this is the distance we need to accomplish for everything from the field flattener through the spacers, through the off-axis guider if you use one, and the filter wheels, filter holders, and all that, all the way down to the camera, and everything needs to add up to about 55 millimeters. So if you take 55 millimeters as what our goal is, let's get this picture up here, and we look at our camera. Let's start back here first. Now, our camera sensor to the edge of the flange for this particular camera is 17.5 millimeters, okay? So let's go back, and we have 55 millimeters as our goal. We take away 17.5, and that leaves us with still 37.5 millimeters worth of space that we need to fill, okay? So that, let's see, my animation's not working too great. So now I've got 17.5 millimeters. Where am I? Go back here. I've got 37.5 millimeters worth of space that I need to fill. So, and that's the space between the edge of the camera all the way down to the edge of the field flattener. Okay, so let's say we've got the camera now, and we're going to add ourselves a filter holder. Well, that filter holder is also going to take up a certain amount of space. And the filter holder is, according to the manufacturer website, is 17 millimeters. So now we've got the distance with the camera, the distance with the filter holder, add those together, subtract them from 55, and we've got 20.5 millimeters left of space to fill. Well, what are we going to fill that with? So now it is time for us to add spacers. And there's lots of manufacturers out there, and they have a buffet of spacers. You just have to choose the one that's the appropriate size to what you need. So if we go back and we said we needed 20.5, really if we got 20 or 21, that's close enough. Within a millimeter or two, it's not going to matter much either direction. But I would go out and I'd probably grab one of these 20 millimeter extension tubes. But what if what we needed was some off the wall numbers, and the math just doesn't work because you'd have to have a whole bunch of 1 millimeter spacers tied together with a 5 millimeter spacer and a 10 millimeter because we wanted 18 millimeters. And now we've got all these wobbly joints, and that just doesn't work. So what some manufacturers have come out with is a variable extension spacer, where you can get anywhere from 18 millimeters to 13.85 millimeters worth of distance. And you just adjust it to whatever you need. And this is really a slick piece of equipment. So what I've got here is an entire assembly for you. This is my camera, and then I've got my filter holder, and I've got a spacer, and I still needed a variable spacer in here, and I've got my reducing field flattener. So this is everything I need to put into the focuser on my telescope. And this is generally what one would look like. And the best thing that you're going to need is a set of calipers. Pick these up, real inexpensive on Amazon or something, and you can actually measure the distance yourself by dropping your set of calipers on right here on the edge of the camera and take it all the way down to the edge of the field flattener. And if that number is the same, then you are good to go. But I've got a scenario for you. What if a friend gave you a field flattener and the field flattener has no markings on it whatsoever? It's from a manufacturer that we don't know who the manufacturer is. This was just something that they found in the bottom of their toolbox and they said, here, try this. Well, a lot of field flatteners come at a standard of 55 millimeters, but not all of them. I've seen some that were only 45 or some that were 60. What if you don't know what that back focus needs to be? Don't worry, there is a way to tell by looking at your images. You just have to do a little bit of playing here. So if your camera is too close to your field flattener, meaning you don't have enough spacers, you will have this nice little diagonal at the edge of your images where everything looks like it's being zoomed in, okay? But if your camera is too far from your field flattener, the diagonals will shift in the opposite direction. Now, when I was doing this for a field flattener, I was giving it a try, and I noticed that about 5 millimeters didn't make a whole lot of movement where I could tell anything was going on. So at about 20 millimeters, that's when I would start seeing things shift. So I always sent things out too far back, and then I wheeled my way back in, and I would keep cutting the difference in half until I ended up with an image that was as flat as I could possibly get it. But the bottom line is your image will tell you what you need. You just need to know which way to go. And this image is just a great way to know, which direction, whether you're too close to the flattener or if you're too far from the flattener. But that's what I've got for you guys today. If you need to find me, you can find me on YouTube as Amy Astro. I have a website, which is amyastro.com. If you want to reach out to me and ask questions, feel free. There's a contact button, and that will send me a private email, and I do my very best to respond to everybody with those emails. I'm on Facebook as Amy Astro Adventures, Instagram, Amy Astro Photography, and naturally we have an email account just like everybody. So is there any questions out there?
Okay, short answer is there any questions? Yes, there are a couple
of
questions.
No. Can I answer those questions?
Yes and no, maybe, depends. We'll find out very, very quickly because chances are I know the answer too. So if you do get stuck, don't worry about it. Don't panic. That's what we're here for. So somebody on the chat, and this is a question that I get asked constantly, and it pops up on just about every forum under the sun. If I'm using a filter, do I include the thickness of the filter within the optical train? I don't know if you come across that particular one yet.
Well, typically if I have a filter, I'm using one of those filter holders. Mm-hmm. So the filter holder is calculated into that 55 millimeters for me. I have used one of those 2-inch filters before and put it on the other side of the field flattener, and I didn't do any calculations for that. It was just fine.
So if you attach a filter before the field flattener, so you have your scope, a filter, and a field flattener, for example, there is no calculations with the back focus. If, on the other hand, if you put the filter on the back before the camera, we'll say, in a filter wheel, the rule of thumb is this. If you know the thickness of your filter, it's roughly 1/3. So let's just assume your filter is, I don't know, 3 millimeters thick. So 1/3 of that is 1 millimeter. So what you're doing is you're adding 1 millimeter worth of back focus to this. So you either have to shorten your spacers. I almost call it extension tubes, which technically is correct, but you have to shorten your spacer by that 1 millimeter. So this is part of the confusion that I see all day long is, do I add or subtract? The confusion is you're adding to your total back focus, so you have to push everything backwards. Most commonly I come across this is, depending on who the camera manufacturer is ZWO has a complete guide of how to put everything in, and the most common thing people always say is they don't account for their filter thickness. If you bought ZWO filters by default, it's actually already been calculated, but the moment you put something else in, let's just say you bought some chroma filters or anybody else, Astrodon, whoever, you actually have to look at the thickness of those filters and you'll see there is a big difference between the two. So remember to add that and then subtract it out of your spacer. So you'll always be at your 55 millimeters no matter what. Obviously, the easiest way is to do exactly just that. Take a test shot. If you start seeing elongated stars, then you're too close. So Amy, are you going to stick around to give little tips and tricks as and when we can slide you in?
Yeah, I can hang out for about an hour.
Perfect. Okay, I think Olga's back, so hopefully her audio's working. Let's see if we can hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, because obviously you're not here in the US.
No, I'm not. I am from Brazil and I'm 15. Now it's 6 p.m., I guess. And I have started to, when I was 13, I have started to watch some videos about astronomy, cosmology, and space in general. I was like really sad with my life, and then I just started to watch some videos and some content, and I got really excited, and I felt like this was my thing. So one of my dad's friends, he told me that astrophotography was a thing, and then that I could take pictures of the night sky in my own backyard. And then I was like, can I really do that? And then he said yes, and then I just really started to get into astrophotography when I was 13 too. So I got my first camera on December in 2018, which was my Canon T6. And I did untracked astrophotography for a long time, since until this year, I guess, when I got my first equatorial mount, that is the EK3. Yeah. So now I just have my 75 300 millimeter lens, my Canon T6, and the EK3. So I just take pictures of the night sky. As I live in a farm, I really dark skies, and it's a pretty awesome thing. Like, I have the privilege to live in the southern hemisphere, and also I got the privilege to take pictures of the night sky.
See, this is a big advantage for you over most of us here in the US, is you have access to the sky that we just simply never get to see. And of course, there are things in our skies that you never get to see. But the best part here is of those people who are in the southern sky, they see the actual core of the Milky Way. As in, we're looking into the center of the galaxy, and we just see this tiny bulge that sticks out for so much. And then whatever else goes above and over our head. So the view that you guys get, we're kind of jealous of it, to be totally honest. And I remember being in Australia, and this is before I got into astronomy, and I was there for a year. And I would point out to my friend, I was like, oh, check out that, check out this. And, my friend was like saying, oh, look, Orion's upside down. And they go, oh, what's that fuzzy cloud patch over there? And I'm like looking at it going, you know what, I have no clue. And I had no idea what I was looking at, and it turned out it was the Magellanic Clouds that I was looking at.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. It's now that I'm into all of the into astronomy and all this stuff, it feels like I've just missed out so much in the southern sky that I don't know. Maybe at some point in time I'll be able to drag my telescope down there and check it out. And of course. The one of the co-founders of STELA Astronomy Group, she's actually in Australia, so she gets to stare at it all day long, which again, kind of jealous of that. But yeah, appreciate you sticking around for all of this. So again, if you guys at home have any questions, feel free to ask us we will do our best to answer them. It's Danielle, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Got to remember everybody's name because this is technically the first time I've actually met everybody other than talking to everybody on Instagram, and everybody has like weird names. So sometimes I just use my real name. It's a lot easier in life. Tell me what the skies are like in Ireland, in all honesty, because I
Not
lived
great
in the
today.
UK. Well, it's not great for us either. It's actually raining right now.
Yeah, right now, not fantastic. So Ireland is really interesting because we're very far north, so we don't get the beautiful Milky Way that Olga gets. But we have very dark skies in the winter, which is fantastic. So we have a lot of nighttime. But then that's the trade-off, is the weather's not fantastic in the winter. In the summer, we have better weather, better-ish, but then we have super short nights. So it's kind of a weird place to be doing astronomy, but there is also a legacy in Ireland as well. Like, they've been doing astronomy here for a very long time. And over in Parsonstown here, they have what was the largest telescope in the world for about, I think it was 70 years. I think it was in the 1860s it was built, the Leviathan. Which is like, I think it's 6 feet across is the mirror that's on the telescope. It's massive. It's absolutely huge. So there's definitely a legacy here in Ireland. We do have very dark skies. We're the only gold tier dark sky park available in Europe. So we have the advantage of being the furthest west. So there's nothing next to us but the ocean. So once you get out to the west of Ireland, the skies are amazing. When you do get clear skies, that's the trick.
Yeah, that's always been the challenge. I mean, don't get me wrong. We are very spoilt here in Southern California. It's not been so great these last couple of years, but prior to me getting into astronomy, it's just weird to have this night sky that is just always unobstructed, and it's just like, I wish I got into this sooner rather than later. So it's definitely, we're spoiled by comparison. I would definitely say that. So you will also have a presentation on running an observatory, essentially. But I'm just going to jump back over to Amy real quick. How long have you actually been doing this for, Amy? Because you obviously know what you're doing here.
Oh, well, 2017 is when I bought my first telescope and started astrophotography. But I've been doing, basic Milky Way photography for quite a few years before that. So I'm still a newbie. I'm learning, and I've got some great club guys that they love to talk and they teach me everything.
Yeah, I know there's that famous saying, is trying to get astronomers to shut up is a tricky
they
thing.
No.
But but the funny thing, it is a passion that most of us have. And it's strange that a lot of us, if you think about astronomy, is a bunch of people hanging around in the dark, and essentially we're on our own. And it's the inability to be able to share an experience with somebody. And it's really hard to explain, and the only way to do it is to get somebody to look. Now, doing astrophotography is one thing, but doing visual is a completely different thing. I mean, I always remember seeing Saturn for the first time through somebody's 12-inch Dobsonian, because I've seen dozens of pictures of it before. I know exactly what it looks like. I've seen this, that, and the other, and I've owned countless books in my collection. But when you see it for the first time, it's just totally different.
It
So,
is.
I mean, what's your experience with all of this? Because I'm assuming that you probably did some visual before you transitioned into imaging.
Actually, I went straight on into imaging,
Wow.
and it wasn't until a year later when I started meeting new people and getting comfortable asking folks if I could look through their telescope that I actually got to see some really cool things. And out at our field, a couple times a year, there's a gentleman that has a giant Dob, one of those that you need a step ladder to get into. I can't believe he travels with that thing. It is so huge, but he just loves showing you things. And I've seen some incredible things that just blow me away. And he popped Jupiter on in there a couple months ago, and I had to jump back because it was so bright, it almost blinded me.
Well, were you actually up on a step ladder? Because
Yes.
it might be the same guy I know. Well, there's a couple of guys who own great big dobs, and I mean like 20 inches, 24 inches. There's a guy that runs around here in California who has a 24-inch. I'm trying to remember his name, but all I remember is seeing the step ladder. You climb up this damn thing, and in all honesty, you're 15 feet up sometimes because when it points
Yes.
straight up, and then you look through this eyepiece and you've got this real bad case of vertigo that you want to fall forward.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's a weird experience, to be totally honest. I don't, Olga, I don't know if you do visual as well, but have you? What's your experience with visual?
My experience is a little bit small, I would say, because I only have a small f10 telescope, which is a gray kite. I don't even know if this brand exists other than Brazil. And it's a very small telescope, but I saw Saturn and the moon and all those things, but I have never seen like big objects and dim nebulas with a huge telescope.
Oh, I think we definitely have to try and get you to do that at some point because it does change your perspective on some of the things that are out there, and I think it's probably going to be even more amazing, especially that you've got the southern sky. If you look at the Large and Small Magellanic Cloud, I mean, looking at that through a telescope is just mind-boggling. Usually, when I take a picture of, say, the North American Nebula, you won't see it, unfortunately. There is just a sea of stars that just go on forever. And when you look at the Magellanic Cloud, it's like the same thing. It's like you just can't count them. There are just so many. It's like a fluff ball full of them. So I've got a question here. I don't want to ignore anybody who's online. It says, reflector or refractor, which one is good for astrophotography? And I'm going to open this question up for everybody, okay? So feel free to chime in and give your input into this. So let's start with Amy.
I use a refractor, and that's because my club guys pointed me in that direction. So it's the only thing I've ever used, and it's extremely easy to use. I don't have to worry so much with the added collimations that I see other folks do out on the field. And I don't have to be as gentle with my scope, which is good for me because I'm clumsy.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I beat the snot out of my telescope as well. Danielle, what's your input?
I'm biased. You can see my telescope in the back. I've got a Newtonian, so I love my reflector. I decided to be the most complicated. They always say, like, if you're starting out, do not start with a reflector, do not start with an equatorial mount. That was the first thing I got. So I love this girl. This is Eleanor back here. But for work, I use a Schmidt-Cassegrain for the actual research telescope. So we actually don't have, nope, sorry, we have two refractors at the castle, but we don't use it necessarily for any imaging at all. We usually use them more for public outreach stuff because they can take more of a beating.
Right.
There you go, more of a beating.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I have access to like countless different scopes, so I get a chance to kind of look through all of them. I don't know if Farah is still watching. I'm hoping she's still hiding in the background because I'm going to drag her back into this because she's the salesperson at the end of the day, wouldn't she? There she is. Farah, let's pretend we're going to do role playing. You know, we've just wandered into your store and it's our first telescope and the budget is under $500. What can we do in terms of astrophotography?
Boy, that's a toughie a little bit, isn't it?
It is, because that is also the most common question we get every time somebody comes into the store. And I know that we have our go-tos.
Yes, I have to tell you, astrophotography, the best way to start is with Skywatcher Star Adventure.
Star Adventure, that's right.
Absolutely. If you have done DSLR photography, you spend $400. You stick your camera on top of it with a zoom lens, and you're ready to go. That's what I would suggest. Or Ioptron. Ioptron has a really nice another traveler's
tracking mount. What was that one called? I've forgotten what it's called already.
It's a Sky Guider Pro.
There you go, Sky Guider Pro. Thank you very much.
That was my first tracker.
Really?
Yeah.
It's great. Now they have them with iPolar, which you don't even have to polar align anymore.
I know.
So,
I wish I had that.
yeah.
So the other one that's worth mentioning for those of you at home, if you kind of want an experience of like a full-size equatorial mount, but don't want to pay the price for it, Explorer Scientific went out of their way to create and develop a mount, which is the Exos 100, which has become very, very popular. The great thing about that mount is you can buy it just by default and you can start working with it. And then you can add pieces to it to build it up over time. And then once you get past that hump, it's not something you just throw away into the corner. You keep these things, but then you can, graduate to something a little bit bigger. Me personally, if anybody asks me, do I prefer a reflector or a refractor? Honestly, I'm going to say refractor every step of the way, just purely because it's a lot easier to use. I don't have to worry about acclimation. I do beat everything up that I currently own, but that's just the way I am because, hey, I bought it, I'm going to use it. So again, for those of you at home, feel free to ask questions at any time. We will try and chime in as much as possible. So Danielle, it's now back to you. So we're going to do your presentation. So if you want to do your screen share,
Alrighty.
We'll get going.
So I don't have such a polished presentation like Amy. I kept it kind of more fluid.
That's
but I just wanted to share my story, I guess, about how I got into astronomy and how I ended up working at the observatory. So before I share my screen, I'll just say that my background's not actually in astro. I didn't go to school for astronomy or science or physics like most people do. I actually went to school for foreign languages, and that was my real first love. So I got a degree in Spanish in the US. So I'm from Buffalo, New York. And I went to school there, got my degree in Spanish, a minor in German, and that allowed me to start traveling and moving out of the country. And so I've lived in a few different places and landed in Ireland, but I found astronomy before I got here. So I was living in Spain and studying there, and then I went back to the US, then back to Spain, and I graduated. I'm sorry, not graduate. I graduated in the US. When I moved back to Spain, I was working there, and I worked for almost a year, and then I went back to the US again, and I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I was in that point in my life, like I hit my major goal. It was to get a degree and get a job in my field, and I did, and I was fluent in Spanish, and that's all I ever wanted since I was like 13. And now what? Like I needed something else. So I was kind of in that place where I was kind of searching and trying to like figure out what I wanted to do. And I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida, where they have St. Petersburg College, and they have their own public television channel, the college television. So they were broadcasting this talk, and I was flipping through the channels, came across the college channel, and I was like, what is happening? What is this guy talking about? He's going on and on. He was so animated on screen. So I stopped and I started watching him, and had no idea, because I caught the end of it, so I had no idea what was going on. But he was talking about the universe, and he was talking about how the elements in the universe match what's inside our bodies. So it's not that we're detached from the universe, it's that we're part of it, like physically part of it. So that was a really different concept to me. I never thought of us, it always feels like space is out there. I never really had thought about like, no, I'm in it, and we're made of the same stuff. So it got me thinking about a lot of things. And then the presentation ended up being, it was an old one from like 2012, maybe even earlier. It was Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was he'd been doing a talk at the university. So I started finding his videos online, and this is well before Cosmos and the books and all of that. So I was finding his lectures that he was doing at different universities and traveling around and stuff. And I started listening to everything I could, which of course led me to like Carl Sagan. And I started reading every book I could get on Carl Sagan. And then I just kept going from there. So I just kept reading and finding as many videos as possible. So I ended up getting an opportunity to leave the US again, and I ended up going to Poland and living there for 2 years. While I was in Poland, I started really thinking, maybe I need to start thinking about getting out of languages and getting out of working in the international student world. That's kind of where I was. And maybe consider doing astro, and how can I do this? So I started looking into conferences, and I found this conference called Starmus, which happens mainly in Europe. I don't think they've done it anywhere. No, they haven't done it outside of Europe, but it's huge. So Dr. Brian May, who is best known for being a guitarist in Queen, is also an astrophysicist. And he and Garrick Israeli have come together to create this incredible week-long festival where they bring all space people from all different backgrounds together. And it's the one I found out they were having one while I was living in Poland. It was in Spain. So I flew down for the conference. It was honoring Stephen Hawking, which was amazing. So I got to basically hang out in a room with Stephen Hawking for a week. Like, why? That's like the best thing ever, with loads of astronauts and loads of like everything. So that was my introduction to the space world. So I will share the screen here. There we go. So at the conference, I actually had the opportunity to meet Neil, and it was such a full circle moment for me, because I went from watching him on TV and reading his books, and it was such an inspiration, to actually meeting him in person. And it was at the gala dinner, and we actually had a blast talking to each other. We had, you could tell in the picture, we were cracking up laughing the whole time. He was fantastic. And that's us there too. And I should have included this other one, but there was a, and Simon, you probably know maybe better than others, but Professor Brian Cox, who is just, he's fantastic. He was at the conference, and I had known of him, and I'd heard a few of his like podcasts. He does the Infinite Monkey Cage, and I'd listened to some of his stuff. And he had been on Star Talk with Neil. So he was there at the conference, and so right after this, and I should have included this picture, and I saw Professor Brian Cox. And so I went over to him, and I was talking to him, and I said, are you enjoying he asked me if I was enjoying the conference. So yeah, of course, this is amazing. I'm meeting so many amazing people. And he was just the most down to earth person, had a full conversation as if he's not like this rock star in the UK, basically. And the thing that really got me was that when I first approached him, the first thing he said to me is, "Are you a scientist?" And it took me back a bit. I was like, no, I wish I was. And later, after I thought about it, I was walking away from the conversation with him, and I thought, here I am, just a girl in a red dress walking up to him. He could have said, "Oh, hi, I'm Brian Cox. Would you like my autograph?" But he wasn't that way. The first thing out of his mouth was, "Are you a scientist?" And that really stuck with me, because my grandmother went to school and wanted to take science classes. She was told she couldn't. Being stubborn and being the way she was like, "Well, I am anyways." And she took chemistry courses, and it was her and only one other girl in the class, but her science teacher felt that she should not have been there. Every single day when she was walking out of class, he would ask her, "Are you ready to turn your book in?" And she didn't. She went through the class and she made it through. So for me to know that that was her experience with science growing up, to then be in a situation where I'm with a scientist who's known all around the world, and his first question to me was, "Are you a scientist?" I thought that was really something that showed that there was growth within the field. There's a lot to go. There really is a lot of work left to be done, but I loved that he treated me as an equal right from the get-go. And I felt like in that moment I needed to make something of it, and I was like, that's it. I need to figure out how to get into astronomy. So that's my next picture here. So I moved to Ireland.
Hold on. We're only seeing your window. We're not actually seeing the actual pictures. We just see the small thumbnails.
No. Hold on a second here then. Is it just the, oh, I see, it's sharing this one. Oh, that's strange.
Yeah. If you do you want to restart the screen share and then just share the entire desktop? It's usually the easiest way.
Is it this? Did that work? No?
There we go.
Okay. Perfect. So, okay. So I moved to Ireland and moved to Cork. And this was all just by chance. I actually hadn't moved here because of astronomy or anything. I moved to the city in 2017. That summer, they were hosting the International Space University. So the whole city was basically just space everything for the entire summer. So I was in my glory and I went to everything I could possibly go to. But the first weekend that I had moved down there, I had moved to a street called Castle Road. Didn't know it was called the Castle Road because there was a castle on it. But I was out walking around and I walked past the castle, which this is where I took this photograph. And I saw the sign out front said Black Rock Castle Observatory. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like I moved down the street from an observatory. This is insane. So I took this picture on this day. This is me Easter Sunday. And I said, I don't care. I said this out loud. I said, I don't care if I have to clean the toilets in this place. I'm going to work here someday. So I went on a mission to try to get jobs around Cork, couldn't get anything. And so a couple months after this picture was taken, it was a Thursday afternoon at about 1:00. And I said, that's it, make good on your promise, get down there and ask if you can get a job. So I got myself up off the sofa, walked in and said, can I work here? And they said, what do you do? And I was like, everything, give me a job. So it was perfect timing. Because it was August, and that's right at the beginning of their Space Week planning. So this observatory is actually in charge of running Space Week Ireland. So they have World Space Week is broken up all into different countries, and so they run it nationally. So it's the craziest time of year for them. It's just there's so much going on, and they were like, any help we can get. Do you have admin experience? Do you have this? Do you have that? And I said, yeah, bring me in. So I started in, my first task was booking flights and accommodations and getting everything sorted for the deputy administrator of NASA who was coming over for a talk, and her husband, who is a architect for extreme environments. So he had done the labs in Antarctica, and he had been working on doing the labs for, or just finished doing the designs for the International Space Station. So just like the most fascinating couple you ever meet in your entire life. They're just amazing. And I was like, that's it. Like, I have to stay on and I have to work in this place. So I started just doing the admin kind of stuff. And then they also do tours and planetarium shows. So I asked if I could start doing that sort of thing. And I wanted to learn more about the night sky. So I asked if I could get trained on doing planetarium shows. And so they did. They started bringing me in. So let me see what I can't remember what my, oh yeah, so this is the outside of it. So you can see the main tower there, that white dome at the top is the observatory itself. So I started doing the planetarium shows, started learning my night sky. It was a fantastic way to do it. I still love doing the planetarium shows. At the moment, we can't do them because of COVID and everything. And I was very, maybe almost to the point of being annoying, but I would bug the astronomer nonstop. So we have an on-site astronomer that works in the laboratories inside the castle. And then we have our head astronomer who runs the head of the observatory who works at the university. So we're connected to the university and the research department there. And anytime the lab door was open, even just a little bit, I was like, because they have actually like it's electromagnetic doors. So you can't just, you have to have a key to get in. If he just left it open or somebody popped in, I was like, hi Ellen, Danielle here again. Let's talk about telescopes. I was obsessed. I didn't have a telescope. I wanted one. I wanted to learn how to use them. So eventually, because I was maybe, I actually don't know why I was so annoying to him, but like he thought it was hilarious. So an opportunity came up to, he needed somebody to help him basically at night in the observatory and helping him get images and things. And he, I think because he knew I was teachable and I was super eager, he actually had asked my boss if I could start helping him out. And initially she said no. She needed me for admin stuff and she didn't want to get rid of me. And he was like, no, she was like, take somebody else, take Simon. He's doing other things. He's doing like instrumentation in school. He'll be great. He said, no, I want Danielle. I want to train her up. So I'm super lucky because, oh yes, another little, this is my view walking into work in the morning. It's beautiful, especially this time of year. So I get to mess around with lots of different telescopes at work. We have lots of different models, different types, because we do a lot of public outreach. So Alan started getting me using all sorts of things, which was fantastic. I know that it's not common when people are going to look at buying different telescopes that they actually get an opportunity to use different types so they know what they like. But I'm super lucky. This is the one I've just started bringing back to life. She's my new favorite at the castle. It's a Meade Alex 200. It's a 10-inch, and it's a mini version of basically what we use at the top of the tower, which is this girl. This is Big Bertha. She's a 16-inch Shimmick Cassegrain Rishi Crescent, and she's mainly used at the observatory for searching for black holes and exoplanets. So I know it's a lot of cabling there, and people always say that it looks better now. This was after COVID. We were doing a lot of work in there. It's a little tidier now. So that's me working inside the observatory. So this night actually wasn't a black hole and exoplanet night. We, aside from the research side of it, which is what my boss does, we also, for Space Week and for other events and things, we do a lot of public outreach and public events and try to get students engaged in astronomy. And we do that. One of the things that we do is by sending out actual images that we take from the observatory. So every year we kind of pick a different object. And this year was Jupiter. So we did like, I think 400 or so images of Jupiter, which was tricky because we didn't have the best weather this year for that. So every chance we got, we were out imaging as much as possible. So that's what this was. And so we package those up. We create like, we have an education astronomer as well. So she creates education packages that teachers can use in classes. So we send the image, the raw image from the observatory. Then we send like, this is what Hubble gets, so that they know, kind of what to expect. Because the image that we're giving them is not like the beautiful, pretty, colorized image. It's going to be, we do one exposure for the bands and one exposure for the moons. So they're getting much like a much rawer, grittier kind of image from us. But then we teach them about like why, for one way you see the bands and you can't see it the other, you can only see the moons and that sort of a thing. So it becomes a teaching element for teachers, because Ireland has actually made space part of their curriculum. So now we're trying to help teachers figure out how to teach kids space. So that's what I'm gathering there. And then, yeah, it's just another image of me there with Big Bertha. So I get to play around with some really amazing equipment. I'm really very lucky that I get to do this. And it was a bit of luck because I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But it was a lot of like knocking down doors and being like, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. So now I am fully trained up on using and operating the dome and the telescope on my own. And so I'm now a full resident astronomer with Alan is the astrophysicist on site. So the two of us are the only ones that are actually able to run and use the telescope at the moment. So it's a real honor and a privilege to be able to do it. And I'm just absolutely in love with this girl. Like I always say, like, I always refer to them as like girls and women, but this is my baby here. And of course my Eleanor in the background. I think that might be, oh yeah, this was an interesting image because you can see me at the back. So normally we're hooked up with the telescope laptop. We're taking images through that. But this night we tried I can't remember exactly what happened with the camera we were using, but we tried the DSLR on the back of it. And I don't think it's hard to see. You can just see the strap of the DSLR in there. It's the camera I normally use when I'm taking photographs and things at the castle and doing like video work and stuff. But we're like, yeah, we'll see. Let's hook it up to the telescope and see what we can get out of it. As we were doing this, the most amazing moon was occurring. It was this beautiful crescent it was in September this year. The moon was super low to the horizon here in Ireland. And as it was setting, this beautiful crescent, it went from like this golden honey color to red. And so I didn't have time to like cable the camera or anything. So I just sit on the back of of the telescope and literally just click away manually. So that's me like with my arm almost falling off. I took like 260 images or something of just me just clicking. And it was the most amazing, beautiful moon. So it was actually a really fun night because it was not so technical in terms of like how we were actually getting the images. It was just manually going away there. So it was really fun. But yeah, that's me. That's Big Bertha there, and that's me inside the observatory. So that's basically my story in a nutshell.
So, obvious question right up is, how much experience do you actually have to be able to run an observatory? I mean, I know you came in almost with literally nothing, and here you are. But for those people at home and aspiring astronomers, especially, I mean, you've just basically proven a point, essentially, that anybody can get into this. But what does it actually take to run this? Because it isn't just about the science behind it.
Yeah. So there are so our observatory is really interesting because it's got a few different elements to it. So it is the education side where we are funded to educate the public and go into students. So we have targets to like hit certain numbers of students throughout the year. And so I don't think a lot of observatories operate in that way. Many of them would be, and from what I've seen, purely research. And so at especially the larger observatories, you have your telescope operators and things who are usually engineers, and then you have your astrophysicists that are just data heads. So I'm in a unique position that the astrophysicist that I work with also does instrumentation. So many times these guys go out and they'll have, I need this much data, I need a very specific target. They hand that over to a telescope operator, they get that for them and then hand it back. Where the guy that I'm working with, who's basically my mentor, is 2-in-1. So I'm getting both sides of it, and he's training me on just the operation and technical side now. But then what he wants me to do is actually start going through data and learning how to process that as well. And eventually down the line, I'm thinking about going back to school and actually getting a degree in it, because if you really do want to get into the research side, then yeah, you do really need to have an astrophysics degree or a physics degree. And if that's something you're interested in, and you start now, like if you're in school and if you're in university, then look into astronomy as an actual degree, because now I'm well out of it. I won't tell you how many years out of it I am, but you can always go back as well.
So the next time you meet Professor Brian Cox, you can actually turn around and say, I'm a scientist now.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to meet him again. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I think he's hiding down in Australia now because he's been contracted to do various different outreach programs down there. So I haven't seen him in a long time, because he used to do stuff with the BBC all the time.
Yeah.
So I think he was supposed to come to the US at some point. So who knows? We'll catch him.
Yeah. The last thing I saw him on was for the BBC, he did the series Planets, or The Planets, I think it's called. That was really
I think
good.
it was a remake of The Planets or something, or some description. It hasn't hit the US yet, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think it was just last summer. It's one of the newer ones. It was brilliant. That was really, really well done.
So one of the questions on the live chat says, what are your favorite objects? So we're going to start with Amy real quick.
Well, I think one of the favorite ones is the Triangulum Galaxy, mostly because that's the first target that I had with my actual telescope. So it's one I try to take every year. Like most folks, I do like the horse head and the flame all together. They're just really cool and really vibrant, and such an easy topic to, target to find.
Olga, what's your favorite one?
I think my favorite maybe, or the Ring Nebula, like I have it here. And I really like the N7, the Ptolemy's cluster. That it's a cluster that it's in Scorpio.
Oh, I think we might have lost her there. We'll come back to her in just a second when she reconnects. She might just disconnect her slightly. What's your favorite object, Danielle?
Oh, it's a really hard one. I don't know if I've specifically have a favorite object. I think Orion might be one of my favorites, just because when I started astrophotography, before I even had a telescope or anything, I just wanted to try photographing the night sky. It was February in Ireland, so Orion was out pretty early, and just pretty prominent in the sky. It was the first thing I ever imaged. But I think the thing I might be the most fascinated, and this might be a boring option for some people, but I'm obsessed with the moon. Like, I really never get sick of imaging and or just even just observing just with the eye. I just really never get sick of looking at the moon.
You know, the funny you should say that, because people ignore the ones that are really close up. I have this argument with people all the time. Is I love looking at through the telescope and looking at a star and wondering, you know, what that star would look like if we could be there. And I just stare at them, going, "Are you serious? The sun is right there. Like, why don't you check that one out?" Because they're pretty much the same in so many different ways. So it's one of these things that I just stare at people and go, "Seriously?" But yeah, the moon actually is a lot more fascinating than people realize, because it's the only object that we can physically get close to in order to see anything of any great detail. I mean, we can't even see ourselves, which is just really odd. I mean, I'd love to be able to just send a telescope up there and look back at us and say, "That's my house." Okay, I think Olga's back. We lost her. Oh, no, now she's gone again. Are we back? Maybe, maybe not. Oh boy. Okay, so
I'm
hopefully,
back. I think I'm back.
yeah, I think your video froze.
Is my connection
there.
back? Everything's
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, it's a little bit slow for us on this side. As soon as it comes back, we'll come back to you. So, it is the time. The time now is it's almost 10 to 2. So we are literally going to run off for a little quick break here, because I tried to build in breaks. I didn't really build a break in on this particular one. I don't know why. I should have, because I'm sure some of you are just dying to go to the bathroom real quick. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. We will be right back, and hopefully we'll have the next person coming along. But she still has to wake up probably, because she's in Australia. I should call her. All right, we'll be right back. All right, we are back, and amazingly enough, my audio actually works for a change. Believe it or not, it actually followed. So Amy had to pop off, and oh, there comes Sarah now. And we're trying to get back in touch with Olga. She's having internet issues here and there, but hopefully she'll be able to get back into the stream. Daniel, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you guys have to do in terms of COVID, some of the protocols and things like that, because it's not the same any longer trying to run a observatory.
So it's been difficult because most of what we do is public outreach and educational outreach. So that means we have a lot of people coming in to visit us. So we could have hundreds of people a day coming through. We have a science exhibit, and we're a science center inside of a castle. So the exhibit's been completely shut down. We can't have people inside anymore. The planetarium is absolutely a no-go. You can't stuff people inside of a dome. That's not happening. And so we've done a lot of, we also travel around the country. So we would do like education road shows and stuff where we go to universities and bring speakers in from NASA and ESA and space industry speakers in, and have like hundreds of kids packed into a theater. Can't do that either. So a lot of the stuff, it has been virtual. We've been switching to online things. So we've been doing live streams and taking the speakers that we would normally bring in and doing YouTube live streams with them. And then also we've had to make our road shows virtual as well. It's in this kind of environment, we'd have like a panel discussion, different presentations, and then the students would be watching from their classrooms or at home. A lot of the, in the beginning, everyone was working from home. So the ability of like YouTube and Zoom and that sort of thing, the chat has been amazing, because then people can just put their questions in and you can keep that conversation going. So we're still finding ways to do outreach and still connect with people. It's been in a very different way. It's very strange to not have that one-on-one interaction with people. And I think for me, one of my favorite things about the job is actually having those observing nights and having people in to use telescopes and having that, being able to share your passion right there in the moment and answering questions. But the virtual environment has been the next best thing. And I think people have gotten a lot more comfortable with it because they've had to during COVID. I think in the beginning they were like, what's Zoom? We don't know what that is. Now everybody's on it.
Yeah, now everybody knows what Zoom is.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we got Olga back. So let's hopefully, fingers crossed, no more internet outages for a second. What was your favorite object that you like to go through, and tell us a little bit more about that?
I was talking about the Ptolemy's cluster. It's a very important object to me. Some people just may find it boring, and I don't know, because it's a globular cluster. It's an open cluster, and as people just don't find them very interesting. But I really like this cluster. It's so cute, and it's one of I think it's the first object I saw with my telescope, and I was like, this can be real. I can't believe I'm seeing some astronomical object, and it was awesome.
What kind of camera equipment and telescope stuff do you actually own? Because a couple of people will be interested in it, because you're relatively new with all of this, and to be honest, based upon what I've been told, you don't have a lot of people that you can talk to, but you seem to like just jumped ahead so quickly. Oh, did we lose her again? Uh-oh. No, I think we've lost her again. Damn it.
I heard what you said, but
okay,
I don't
good.
know if you're just hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think we lose
Can
you
you
every
hear me?
now. Yeah, we can hear you, but we just lose you every now and then.
Okay, so I think that my connection is better now, at least. So my equipment, I have a Canon T6 and the 75-300mm achromatic lens. I don't have any top tier gear or anything. I just do my best with the gear I have, and I don't know if I can, for example, I deal with a lot of chromatic aberration, but I think
Oh, okay.
just having
Yeah, I think we're going to have internet connection issues with Olga because she is in Brazil. Not that it's an excuse or anything like that. Okay, Sarah, can you hear us?
Good morning. I can.
Marvelous. Okay.
Whatever
Well,
it is.
it's morning for you, right? Exactly.
Yep.
So, this is the part where we probably should have done this first as opposed to backwards, but you know, time zone being a problem, you know, you've kind of been moved to the end because I don't want to have you waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I thought it would have been a little unfair. So, tell us about STELA and who they are.
Okay, so a bit of a backstory. So I started astrophotography February last year? No. Yeah, February last year. Sorry, it's early, coffee. And I knew nothing about it, bought the wrong equipment, everything like that. Joined an astronomical society here, met some amazing people. But I walked into the imaging group and I felt so out of place. It was a room full of, don't want to be insulting, old men.
You're not, trust me, that's exactly what it is.
And amazing people. I've met, some of my really good friends now from there. But yeah, I just felt so out of place. And I come from an industry that is highly male, excuse me, highly male dominated. So I'm used to working around men and, being the only female in a room and stuff like that. But I just thought, what if, young girls or women who aren't as comfortable with that want to get into this and they just feel intimidated. So I've been wanting to do some outreach for women since I discovered astrophotography, and I'd met Diana, I think through the Clear Skies Network Twitch channel, and chatting to her about it, and she had the same idea. So we kind of one day, Diana messaged me. She's like, "Hey, why don't we do a video call with a bunch of women? Let's connect with them and yeah, just have a weekly video call and." Just a support group basically for women in astro. And I'm like, yep, cool. And so we started that, and we've got it running, and I think we've got now about 34 ladies who join us, and not all the time. People might join sort of when they can. It's sort of a no pressure thing, but STELA's just a safe place for women to ask questions that they might be a bit intimidated to ask, maybe on a public forum where you're going to get the majority of people answering males who are seasoned in this hobby. And, it can be quite intimidating. So yeah, we wanted a safe place. I guess no judgment, because it can be quite a judgy hobby,
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the great thing about I guess the 21st century modernization, social media. So many things have now become more and more acceptable, and there is a part of social media that I've loved, because when I go through all of my own content and I look through the statistics and I flick through everything, it's really great to see the percentage of girls being interested in astronomy. And it's not just an all-male dominated sport, because it's been like that since the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's only because, at least for me, my perspective anyway, social media has changed that so much, and it's opened it up, and then somebody can come along and go, well, hold on a second, she's into this stuff, so maybe I need to connect with her and connect with this person and connect with that person. And it's sprawled on from there, because before it's like, how do you know who's who and who to talk to?
Yeah. absolutely. So we have some plans. STELA is very, very new, so we're still working on, what it is we're going to provide to the astro community, or for women, basically, in the future. But we do have a lot of plans. We have some group chats, which are quite fun. We have catch-up calls a couple of times a week. So we have one, well, for me, it's Saturday night, so that's perfect, a glass of red. And then one on Tuesday mid-morning my time. So I think that would be like Pacific evening, which we try and work out for all the time zones. Danielle, I think it's 2 a.m. sometimes.
Yeah, it's like the timing for me is awful, but I'm still there.
Yes.
Well, ironically, you work in astronomy. You should be up at, whatever crazy hours.
Kind of the best part is that my sleep schedule is all over the place anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And my boss, when I just tell him like, oh yeah, I know, I was talking to the Astro group, he's like, that's fine, come over whatever time you want.
Yeah, it's for me, like I'm probably in the wrong hobby because I need sleep. But anyway,
what actually got you into astrophotography? And this is it always is the same story for me that I hear on a regular basis why people get into it. But is there something, what was it that just attracted you to it, regardless if you're a girl or a guy?
It's probably going to be the same story, to be honest. My husband and I, we were just randomly chatting. We're like, oh, we should just buy a cheap, a telescope and have a look what's up there. And we were in a shopping center and walked past just a store, and they had a sale on telescopes. So we bought one that was like $120 or something, took it home and set it up, and it was a super moon that night, and clear as anything outside. And I took a photo of the moon through the eyepiece with my phone, and I'm like, wow. So I grew up in Bortle 1 skies. I'm 36 and I spent 33 years under Bortle 1 skies, never knowing anything about light pollution or I always remember telling my friends, I've never seen so many stars as I have, where I lived. So I kind of really regret not knowing that there was more out there, I guess, when I lived, in those super dark skies. But yeah.
So where are you based right now? Sorry, I forgot to ask you that.
So I'm in Adelaide at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. My husband's in the army, so we don't really get a choice where we live. Yeah. But I am moving back to Bortle 1 skies before the end of the year, so I'm so excited about that. It's all about the dark skies. Yeah, so I took that photo of the moon, and I'm like, I have to know, if there's more to this. So I had a Google. The next day, I took the telescope back and exchanged it for the 6S SE behind me, which was completely wrong for astrophotography, and well, a very expensive paperweight at the moment. And yeah, started doing some research and buyer's regret, but now I have a good equipment, and I've learned what I should have done. So that's another thing with STELA is we have a lot of members who don't have equipment, and I would like to help people avoid my mistakes if I can, purchasing the wrong equipment for astrophotography.
Just out of interest, apart from, if you're having mechanical issues with the 6SE, that's another question. But what is it about the 6SE that you don't actually like? Just out of interest.
Because the mount's not an EQ mount for starters. The focal length is 1500 mil, which is great for, I guess, my level that I'm at now, the knowledge that I've got now. But as a beginner, it's so deep, I guess, I would suggest starting a bit wider than that. But yeah, I just had no idea what I was doing. So, but I've learnt, by making mistakes as well. So I can hopefully help people not make those expensive mistakes.
See, the interesting thing is for us is it's actually the Next Star series of telescopes, the 6, the 8s, and whatever other crazy sizes that they want to get into. They tend to be the most popular first choices for a lot of people, and there's a difference between astrophotography and visual. The
Yeah.
6SE, 8SE is actually great as a visual scope, but I'm not going to lie, they're not the best when it comes down to astrophotography. So where did you progress forward from there? I mean, did you decide to go like a really small refractor? Did you go into like just DSLR type shooting? Where did you move from there?
Yeah, so my next step from that was the mount. So I went to the Skywatcher EQ6R Pro mount because I'd read quite a bit that it was, a good sort of intermediate mount, I suppose. And I'm the kind of person, throw me in the deep end, I'll sink or swim with this thing. And I love how technical it is. Yeah. So, and with that, I borrowed an old Meade LX55 mount, which sounded like a coffee grinder, but geez, it tracked really well. So yeah, and then I got the 6SE, but I was just using my Canon full frame camera and a lens on that for a little while, and then I borrowed a friend's Skywatcher 8080 refractor, and then I bought a secondhand QHY 183 color camera, and I'm still blown away at how much they pair together. Like they're just meant for each other, those two pieces of equipment. So I ended up buying myself an ED80. So that's what I use now. So it's quite wide field, and I do want to get into a bit more focal length down the track. So maybe next year. I want to explore a bit more wide field, but yeah.
One of the greatest things about your group is, for most of the other people that do or get into astrophotography, Daniel, who works at the store, says it best. We call it analysis paralysis. And what I mean by that is a lot of us will just get overwhelmed with numbers, statistics, information, and we're looking up specifications. In other words, we put the nerd in nerd, basically. But we don't shoot anything because we're too busy going, well, what's the back focus? What about this filter? What about that? Or this thing's only 5 nanometer band pass. Well, I need to do this, that, and the other. This is an F, whatever. And this is the thing I love about you guys, because I watch a lot of people on Instagram, is you just don't care. You just shoot. You don't care about back focus. You don't care about a field flattener. You don't care about which camera you just stick something in there and start going. And that is a part of the whole thing. It's the discovery behind it, that you're not stuck staring at, how to make this thing work. And it's been great watching, most of you guys just from nothing to just like, hold on a minute. It's like, I didn't even go that fast when I first got into all of this.
Yeah. And I'm not science minded, and I hate maths. Don't ask me what 2 + 2 is, but yeah, I'm like that, just let me shoot something and I think your curiosity will just bloom from there, and I think a lot of us get a lot of flack for not doing calibration frames the right way we should. But it's working. I think it's working for me. I'm sure my images could be better if I took a bit more care, but I'm so proud of what I've produced already. So yeah.
I always tell people, don't compare your images to somebody else's. Don't look at somebody's thing and say, that's what I want to do. Because people have a bad tendency to then peg themselves in a problem where they're trying to emulate something that may be technically beyond them, either from a skill standpoint or an equipment or whatever the case may be. 9 times out of 10 have I discovered that when somebody says, look at this picture that this guy took, why can't I take pictures like that? I have the exact same scope. And I said, well, where exactly do you live? And when they say somewhere, I'm like, oh, geez, you know, you've got the jet stream that is killing you for a start. You know, that doesn't help. Or I find out they're in the middle of Hollywood. And one of the greatest things here is there is a girl that does astrophotography off of her balcony, and I am not joking here. She can't see Polaris; she only sees a small patch of sky, and she shoots strictly narrowband because she knows, you know, the problems behind it. She'll show you a picture, and you would not believe it came off of her balcony because it looks like you just shot it in a dark sky site. That's how amazing it is, and
That's awesome.
This is just things that is like. And I love it when she shows a guy this, because the guy just goes, you know, you can see his head going, "This is not possible," you know. I'm like, I know how it was done. I got to ask you this, Danielle. I noticed that you were using your DSLR camera. Well, actually, mirrorless. You have an A7, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How do you compare using that with the actual astronomy camera on the back of the LX200? I mean, what's the big difference that you find?
Yeah, you can't, like, there is no comparison. It's a completely different thing. The Astro camera is obviously better, but sometimes the issue that we have with the Astro camera that we use is the download time. It just takes forever. So for us to get images, it's a process. So for like that moon, I knew right away, like, this is not going to be here for very long. We don't have time to like set up the camera and get it all connected, wait for each image, 30 seconds or whatever it's going to take for each one. Let's just fire away. So for that one, it wasn't so much about like quality and everything. It was more about just timing is really what that was. So yeah, it's hard to compare. You can't really, and the other, we always shoot in monochrome too. So
right.
DSLR obviously isn't.
Okay, so hopefully Olga's internet might have gotten better. Let's see if we can grab her back.
I think it has.
Good. Okay, so hopefully we don't lose you again mid flow. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the whole thing, and what is it like being a part of this group?
For me, I think that I got into just because I was into astronomy. So as I found those books and everything about space and cosmology, I read a lot about Einstein, general relativity. I tried even to learn about the equations, but I just can't. I'm not so great at math. So I have started to try astrophotography, and it was very, very great for me because it's a nice hobby. I have a lot of fun with it. And even though, like in Brazil, it's really hard to get quality equipment for a decent price because we have a lot of taxes and importation things, and it's just so hard to find those gears and everything. So almost all my equipment except for my camera, it's all used, and all I got as a gift because it's really expensive. It's a really expensive hobby, and even more because I don't even have a job, so it's hard to get into my parents like, oh, please give me this, I don't know, $100 thing. It's kind of like it's not what I want to do. So I just try to do my best with my small equipment. But even though I have some trouble with all of those things, I can get some even decent images, I think, because of considering my equipment. And I had a great evolution in the past years, and I've been doing Astro for 2 years now. Yeah.
Right.
And it's a great thing for me. I love this hobby. It's something that makes me so happy and excited to talk about it. And I don't know any woman in Brazil that does the same thing. I don't know because I don't search for many. And I have a group here in Brazil which has some astrophotographers, and we were going to have a meeting, but we didn't because of COVID. So yeah, I think that's most what I like into, because I try to take all clear skies and take my images, and it's just something surreal. I love this hobby.
So how did you find out about STELA then?
Well, I have been on Instagram for a long time, and I post all my images there. And I don't even remember, but it was a guy who told me that there was some girls and they are doing astronomy together. And I went like, really? I need to know them. But I knew some girls who had some YouTube channels before, but I didn't know we they were together in something like this. So I was really excited, and I sent a message to Diana, and she put me in the group, and I am very proud to be in it. It's like one of the best things that happened with me in this hobby.
Cool. Sarah, how does everybody else at home who's watching this, how do they get in touch with you guys, and how can they become a part of all of this? And
Yeah, so-
obviously, it's not open to guys, so guys, don't waste your time.
Yeah. So you can go to our Instagram, which is we.r.stela, STLA, and DM us there, or Diana's Instagram, Vanilla Moon 22, or myself, Stella Astro Oz, some dots in there. And then, yeah, we'll have a chat first. We always have a chat with new members first, and explain what we're about and stuff. Yeah, and we're building a website as well, which will feature our members on there. And we're in the future, once COVID's hopefully gone, we're going to plan some events and stuff around the world, for our members to catch up and meet, because that's half the battle, as well as, a lot of women don't like going out in the dark, remote places by themselves at night. So,
Well,
yeah,
I was going to say Diana does. I know
she does,
all,
yeah.
Some of the stories that she comes back with are just like, they're just brilliant. What was it she said?
Coyotes and
I've read something recently, something about her being lost for like 2 hours or something like
couldn't
that.
find a car. Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right. Couldn't find the car for 2 hours in the dark.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, we want to build that network too, so we can connect ladies in wherever they may be. Yeah, and like a buddy system type of thing. So yeah, we're gonna plan. Got lots of plans for Stella, but yeah, we're very new and building it, and it's grown quite quickly actually. So it's been very exciting.
So, just out of interest, I mean, this is obviously not just something for the US or just Australia. This is a worldwide phenomenon as far as we're concerned. How challenging has it been, especially with the current climate, with promoting something like astronomy to women across the world?
Yeah, we've had, in terms of acceptance, I think we've had a lot of DMs actually from guys saying this is amazing, like this is so good that you're doing this. On the other hand, we've had a few very negative comments as well, but that's why we're here. So yeah, but I think at this particular point in time, with what's going on in the world, I think it couldn't have come at a better time. Everybody is connected. No, not everybody. The majority of people are connected through social media or online platforms, whether it be Twitch or Discord or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our exposure is much greater at the moment than it would have been excuse me,
That's okay,
say this time last year.
Danielle, when you're doing a lot of your own outreaches, I mean, do you see a difference between the two sexes of people who are participating? Because it's odd that I've noticed that when with you watch, especially younger kids, the girls are far more fascinated and way more interested than the guys are in general.
I think with I get, in Ireland you still have a lot of like all boys schools and all girls schools, and I do find that the all girls schools really have really intense questions. Like they really want to know stuff, but I do find it maybe not between the sexes, but maybe more of like age differences. The younger kids don't have that fear of like sounding stupid or asking a dumb question, and they ask some of the most brilliant questions. And then you get into the older age groups, and that's when they kind of get a little bit more reserved. But I do find that there's still a stigma of like, boys go into engineering and boys go into science, and the girls don't always know that that's an option for them. So a lot of the stuff that we do is bringing in women that are working in the space industry in to do talks, so that they can see that, yeah, there are women out there working, and it's still a very male dominated field in many ways. And so it is really important to show not just the young girls that there are women working in space and doing things in space, but also the young boys. I think a lot of them, we do a lot of activities and things, and you see like draw an astronaut and stuff, and it's a boy in an astronaut suit. Like, no, there are women in space too. So it's really important to have groups like this, just to be public and out there and show, like I said, not just the girls, but then also the boys, that there are other girls out there doing astro things.
Cool. So there hasn't been any questions, but there's been a lot of comments, I will say. And a lot of them are hellos, and I'm sure you'll recognize these names. Jessica Ann Carlisle says it's great to see so many amazing women represented in astro. Helena's Astrophotography. You know what? I wear glasses and I can't even see my own screen. This is crazy. Helena's Astro, and then Annette Huntsley. Proud to see the STELA girls being amazing and inspiring as ever, so knowledgeable and talented. So obviously you guys have got a ton of support out there. That's going to just dig through because it's kind of hard to read if there's anything else. But yeah, so if you guys at home, if you guys have any questions about astronomy or any questions about STELA, feel free to send them through. We're probably going to be on for like another 10-15 minutes tops, and then we're going to call it a night, because I know at different points, I'm sure Danielle's just dying to just jump in the bathtub and call it a night, and Sarah's probably got her kid biting her ankle round about now.
I need more coffee. I was up imaging all night, so.
Oh, what were you imaging?
The Tarantula Nebula.
Can we see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
No, you know what? I'm going to say, it doesn't matter what you show me, because I don't get to see it. I see none of the stuff that happens in the southern sky, and it drives me insane that, and it doesn't matter who takes the picture, where it comes from, if it's a NASA photo or whatever. The southern sky to me has so much crazy stuff. And then the kicker is no matter what, you guys still get what we see.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there is a challenge at some point. I have to wait for the summer again, because I get the Cat's Paw Nebula and the Lobster Nebula. There is a 20-minute window that I can see this thing. And every single time when it's within this arc, I will take at least 2 10-minute subs. And over the course of the summer, do I build enough subs to actually create one final image? But it's just a struggle. So what was the other one that I wanted to see is the Fighting Dragons of Era, I think it's called.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm sure they are. You get to see them.
yeah. Very spoiled.
Listen,
yeah,
I'm very far north here, so I'm really suffering in terms of sky.
Oh, that's right, because the Orion Nebula to you is like really low down.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I want to see this. Do you want to do the screen share?
Yeah. So this is just this is only 2 hours on it, which I took the other night. I took another 8 hours of data last night, so I'll have 10. So times this by, can't maths. Yep, you'll
Wait, how long have you been doing astrophotography for again?
February last year. So
what?
Yeah, I've really only had my rig complete for a few months now with the current setup I've got. So I'm pretty happy with.
Can you zoom in? I just want to get the closer look of the actual trencher. I mean, the other, not to say none of it's fascinating, the rest, all of it is, but it's just crazy.
It's very noisy still because there's only 2 hours in there, but I actually really love right in here. You can see all those stars and all the noise.
Just out of interest, what kind of, I mean, is this just stacked? Do you have any processing that you've done to any of this other than linear stretch?
Yeah, I've done a little bit. So this is just darks and the lights. The darks don't even really match the lights. It was just a test run to see what the data was looking like. But I did a bit of stuff in PixInsight, so some background extraction, because with the filter that I'm using, the L Enhance, it comes out very green. So yeah, just a background extraction, an SCNR to get rid of the green, and just your curves and histogram transformation, and that's all I've done on it.
What's your goal on this one? I mean, are you like trying to go for some crazy long exposure at some point?
No,
or...
I never planned. So night before last. So we haven't had clear nights in like months. Night before last, it was clear enough and nothing was up. So I'm like, I'll just shoot the tarantula. For me, I know this sounds really spoiled, but it's a little bit boring for me. So I'm like, I'll just chuck it on tarantula and get a little bit on there before Orion comes up, because I really want to shoot Orion again this year now that I've got some more knowledge behind me. Anyway, I shot the 2 hours on this and then went to Orion and the clouds came in. So yeah, that's why I only got a couple of hours on this last night, but the night before. But then it was clear last night and I'm like, oh, it's kind of looking okay. So maybe I should put some more effort into it. And then, yeah, I shot the 8 hours last night. So yeah.
How many minutes worth of exposures are you doing, or are these relatively short?
These are 8-minute exposures.
Oh, okay, so long exposure then.
Yeah.
So Astro Girl AU says, what astronomy target has been the most difficult for you to image, and how did you overcome those challenges?
For me, it was the helix, and I think the girls know this because I rant about it all the time. The helix I shot, well, just before this, a few weeks ago, a month ago, whenever it was. It was my first time. I bought the L Extreme filter as well, and it was the first time using that and using Sequence Generator Pro as well. So it was a combination of new equipment, new software, new target as well. But yeah, I had a lot of difficulty stacking the helix, and I've heard that it is not just me. It is.
No, it's not. It is
a
bit
bit challenging
in the butt.
Yes, good, thank you. So yeah, I'm not happy with it, but I got something out of it, and maybe next year I'll try it again. But yeah, the helix is my nemesis at the moment.
Helena asks, have you gotten your eyes on a specific telescope? I'm going to take my glasses off 1 second. Sorry. Have you gotten your eyes on a specific telescope for when you want to start imaging at a larger focal length?
Not really. One of my friends is selling a, I think it's a 10-inch Skywatcher carbon fiber Newtonian, because he's just bought some other massive Canon of a scope. So I'm kind of considering that, just to get, and I've seen the images that he's produced with it, and they're just incredible. So possibly that, but then I was also chatting to a couple of friends yesterday, and possibly giving the 6SE a shot, because its focal length is 1500 mil. With a reducer, it's, I don't even know, but it goes, yeah, it maybe, I don't know, but no sort of solid plans at the moment.
I'm not going to ruin it for you if you're planning on using or trying to do the 6SE again, but there is a couple of interesting challenges that you might have to overcome right off the bat. You don't get mirror shift as drastic as that, but it's a lot to do with figuring out a way to lock that mirror down, especially when you come to the meridian flip. All SCTs of any size suffers from this, and you're nodding profusely right there, Daniel.
Yeah, I was like, we had issues with that on the 16-inch for sure. As soon as that meridian flipped, it's like, oh, great.
Yeah, right. See, I don't know anything about the SCT either, so this is good to hear.
So what do you do to combat that problem?
We try not to flip it. We really try not to. And there's nothing that we really do specifically. It's just we actually do try to avoid it as much as possible, and yeah, just staying on top of collimation, and yeah, that's it.
Just have you got any shots that you can share with us that you guys have taken with that scope? Because I'm sure some of us would love to see it, regardless of what it is.
Actually,
Or you're not allowed to?
No, I'm allowed to. I just don't know if I have any on this laptop. I
Oh.
think yeah, it's all on my work laptop actually. I don't know if I have. Actually, I'll look real quick and see if I have something.
While she's doing that, is there any other objects that you like to shoot as well, Sarah?
I mean, I like shooting everything. Like I say, I'm not a planner. I will set my gear up and then be like, well, what's up? What can I shoot? And I'll just sort of pick something. And I think because I'm so new to it, there's so much out there that I haven't shot yet. But like a lot of people, I think Orion is one of my favorites just because it was the first thing I ever shot, like a lot of people. Very cliche here. But yeah, Horsehead is one of my favorites because I'm a horse nut. Yeah, I think my plans for this year, though, I want to focus on Thor's helmet. My husband and I are a bit Nordic nerds, so that kind of want to work on that to get a print in the house. And I am actually receiving a Radian Raptor from OPT. So I'm super excited to give that scope a try as well.
Sounds like you're getting spoiled already.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you find anything, Daniel?
No, I don't have anything on this laptop. I'm so bummed. If I log into my work one from here, it'll take me forever because they have the authentication stuff I have to do and all that. So
yeah, the usual VPN stuff.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You mentioned that you guys are looking for exoplanets and black holes. I mean, how are you imaging stuff? Like, I mean, it's a black hole is a black hole. So
Yeah,
just explain it almost.
It's actually funny because I was talking about this today, how a lot of the stuff that we post out, like the schools and stuff, we usually do planets and that because it's like nicer looking. But the black hole images aren't really that exciting. For me, they're fascinating. I absolutely love them. It's my favorite thing. But it literally just looks like a black nothing with white dots. Somebody described it, I think we were talking about this earlier, like the when your TV goes fuzzy, that's kind of what our images look like.
Oh yeah, the white noise.
It's basically what it looks like. So when we're looking for, we have black holes that we're specifically looking for, and then we know where we want to point the telescope, and then it's a matter of taking images. We have our star field, and then we literally print it out, and then we're looking at the laptop screen going, all right, we're flipping the page around going, does this pattern match this? Is this it? And then once we get the pattern matched and we're looking at the screen, then we know, okay, the black hole is there. Because you're right, like you can't really see a black hole because it's black. So you're just looking for the region and you're looking for any signs around the black hole. And so what they do at the observatory is it's called SELPHA. It's a selective photometry. It's short for selective photometry.
Right.
So they've developed a technique where they can differentiate between the light scatter in the atmosphere. So they can differentiate between that light and what's actually coming from a star. And they've gotten it really, really good. So, which is really important because we're at sea level. The castle was originally built as a fort, and it was a Navy fort. So like we're literally at sea level. So we have a lot of atmosphere above us. And so it's really important that they're able to essentially erase the atmosphere to be able to look at these sorts of objects. And they use the black hole and the exoplanet because you have your lights are your light is varying. So it's not so much that they're studying the black holes and exoplanets themselves, it's more of that they're using these two objects to perfect the technique.
Right.
So they're looking at quasars and blazars. That's their main focus. And then the exoplanet, because you have the planet transiting the star, then your light shifts when the planet actually moves in front of it. So then they're able to do the measurements and say, okay, this is working, do it again and go, all right, well, we can make that, we could tweak it here and make it a little bit better. So that's why they're using those two objects. But I'll tell you right now, exoplanets are fun to hunt.
So it sounds like you're doing more photometry work.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever do spectroscopy?
Yes. That's I don't. I work. The astrophysicist does. So I work with him on getting the images, and then he does all that fun stuff.
Have you actually gotten into spectroscopy yet, or is it something that's probably got? That's not my thing.
No, yes, and no. I see it's literally all over the lab. It's everywhere. That's part of what he's teaching me, and what he and I also, if I get the opportunity, would like to go back to school to do that and actually really dig into it, because I like that kind of thing.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, because I mean, I didn't really get into spectroscopy until recently, and it's the weird part of it here is I'm more actually interested in the data acquisition side of things to a certain extent, but now looking at knowing the composition of something is like far more interesting, and you think to yourself, it's like, oh, that's got full of whatever random element and so forth and so on. Photometry for me is just like, I know next to nothing about it. I mean, I know of the different varying filters and why people use them, but it's just like, it's just one of those things that just makes my head spin, because I guess for us as an astrophotographer, the mistake we have is we just want to see something, whereas photometry is very different.
Well, that's why it's interesting being a part of this group, because it's literally the opposite of what I do, because everybody's making these incredibly beautiful images. And then if I make a beautiful image, I get like, well, we don't need that. That's not scientific. We don't care about that part of it. Like the colors actually really mean something. So you manipulating the color is an issue.
Right. I mean, I get that constantly as well. Oh, what's this one? I just missed that one. What's your experience using Barlow lenses, focal extenders with astrophotography, or do you try to avoid them? I'm assuming that's to Sarah.
I have not used Barlow lenses at all with my astrophotography. I've used them a bit with the 6SE when I was doing a bit of visual with my my friend, but yeah.
What about reducers?
I've got a reducer for the 6SE, but not my current setup. So yeah, I think they obviously are good, and field flatteners as well for your images. I don't need that with my ED80 and QHY183. Like I said, they're just made for each other. Well, my two pieces of gear are anyway. So yeah, I don't have any aberration issues at all or anything like that. So yeah.
I got to ask you this, because since you own a 183, and it doesn't really make any difference who makes the camera, what do you do when you deal with the amp glow from that particular camera? Because I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the amp glow is horrendous, really, really bad. But my darks take them out perfectly. So yeah, darks are a must.
So just for people out there who don't know what a dark is, what exactly is a dark frame?
So a dark frame is the same temperature and exposure time. So if I'm shooting 8 minutes subs at -15, I shoot exactly the same thing, but with the cap on the scope or the camera. So it's just black, and all you see is the noise and the amp glow, or any imperfections, I suppose, which cancels out on your light frames. So
what was your expectation when you first shot something and you saw that? Because I remember when I had my 183 and I shot something, and I have one of those neighbors that leaves lights on and all sorts, and I was like, what on earth is this? And it took me ages to figure it out. I started blocking stuff. I put a great big thing up, and it would not go away. I didn't know what it was. Tell me, what was your reaction to it when you first saw it?
So I guess I was pretty lucky, because I bought the camera off a friend, and I tried it at a camp that he was at as well. And I'd been warned about the amp glow. Yeah. And yeah, I shot it. And that was when I was shooting my tarantula. And I'm like, oh, is this going to be okay? And I was a bit, oh, should I buy this camera? Should I not? But then I, and it's very confronting. And a lot of people will tell you actually, excuse me,
it's okay.
Amp glow is really bad because you're going to lose data. I haven't found that. However, I'm relatively new to the hobby as well, but I mean, just take a few extra subs.
Yeah, it's the best way to deal with it.
Yeah, but yeah, just the dark's just calibrated out perfectly, so I don't find it an issue. Yeah, I mean, the next camera I purchase will probably be something maybe like the 533, which has no amp glow. I think the 2600, the 6200 would be the dream, but
well, I have a 2600. The 62, I think, is just, in all honesty, for those people out there that have been eyeballing this camera for such a long time, it's a great camera, don't get me wrong, but in all honesty, I do not need this type of resolution, and I don't need these gigantic file sizes, because when I'm doing solar, the camera that I'm using is the 174. It's a relatively small camera. And the biggest problem here is like, what the heck do I do with all this data? And in all honesty, I just dump it all. Once I've shot what I've shot and then posted it, I delete everything. Yeah, because I'm not NASA, I'm not ESA, I'm not any of these companies. I can't afford to store tons and tons of terabytes worth of data. Oh, is that your kid?
Yeah, this is Evelyn. Say hi.
Is she?
Hi. She's half asleep.
Is she going to become an astrophotographer at some point?
Yeah, she won't have a choice.
All right. So we're going to pretty much call an end to this, because I'm sure some of us need to get lunch, dinner, breakfast, or just go to sleep in general. So again, thank you very much for doing this and being a part of all of this. And I think, and hopefully I speak for most people, that I think you guys have done such a great service for the astro community as a whole, not just for women, but just for everybody in general. And we would love to have you back on here again, and hopefully I get to see some more of you guys' work. And I do want to see more of the Tarantula Nebula, because like I said, I do not get to see stuff like that, and I'm just like blown away already and jealous.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And yeah, we really, at STELA, we really appreciate people like yourself getting behind us and getting the word out. So thank you.
Awesome. Again, my name's Simon. I am the stupid astronomer, because I do the stupid things so you don't have to. We will be back in about 2 weeks' time. I'm not going to announce who the guest is in case he has to bail out, because he is, he's a big profile dude, man. People want to take this guy seriously. But I'm not going to say too much about who it's going to be. It's just going to be a surprise. And then into December, we are going to move into the new format where we only do talks once a month, and then the following one talk from that would be me and Daniel, and we will bring in a random person. So if you want to be that random person, we'd love to have you on too, because you can quiz us, you can annoy us, you can say whatever you want to us, you can abuse us. We want to deal with it, because that is the whole point. We want to try something different for a change. All right, stay safe, social distance, the whole 9 yards, wear your masks, have all sorts of fun, and more importantly, use your telescopes and do cool things. All right, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.